We'll start with a roll call, please.
Mayor Weiss.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Feller.
Here.
Councilmember Kime. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Here.
And if you could please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we are going to start with the Chamber Rep to recognize our Business Member Spotlight of the month. The quarter, actually.
On behalf of the Oceanside Chamber of Commerce, I'd like to call up Chris Weiner of Alpha Graphics North County and Oceanside to be recognized as our Member of the Month for October. Alpha Graphics is owned and operated by longtime Oceanside residents Cindy and Tom Gominski. They offer print, custom signage, and video services for individuals and businesses in North County. Some of their local clients include Swami's, the Oceanside Arcade Tattoo, KOCT, and even the Aqua Cafe. Chris has been with Alpha Graphics for about 2 years now, and during his time there, he's been an active member of our organization, attending various networking events throughout the year, serving on our Oceanside Young Professional Network Committee and our Membership Ambassador Committee. And finally, servicing signs for Chamber's large-scale events. Chris also recently started offering a free banner to every Chamber member holding a ribbon-cutting ceremony for their grand opening or their anniversary. We've seen a number of our member businesses taking advantage of this offer and thank him for his generous support for their special day. Chris is part of the Oceanside Longboard Surfing Club. He's an active member of Coastline Church, and he volunteers in his spare time with the Tree of Life Ministries to help serve families in need. Chris, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah. Thank you, Emerald. Yeah, this is a huge honor. A year and a half ago, I called Emerald. We had been members of the Chamber for a long time, but hadn't been super active, and decided, called her up, said, hey, what could I do to get involved and get active? And I have to say, it's completely transformed my business. I've made tons of connections, and a large majority of my business now comes through Chamber referrals, Chamber members, and it's just been great. And so, thank you so much. It's a huge honor. Thanks.
So at this time, I'll have Councilmember Sanchez.
This is the proclamation in honor of National LGBT History Month. So Max Disposti, Lisa Nava, Lorna, please come up, and other folks? Yes? Yes, please come on up. I am honored to do this. Thank you, Mayor Weiss, for allowing me to actually read the proclamation in honor of this very historic month, LGBT History Month. We have had a history in Oceanside of supporting all of our diverse community. Just last year, we had a 5-0 vote in support of transgender in the military. And this was the only proclamation that was, it was the only resolution that was actually passed in the whole county. And it was Oceanside that did it. And I'm so proud of our city of Oceanside that we are standing up for all rights in Oceanside. Thank you very much. So I'm going to go ahead and read the proclamation. Whereas the City of Oceanside is a multicultural, diverse community comprised of residents and visitors who come from all walks of life and from all over the world. Whereas the City of Oceanside promotes a respectful and inclusive environment where all diversities are respected, included, and celebrated, including the city's LGBTQ community. Whereas the North County LGBTQ Resource Center was founded in Oceanside in 2008 and has been an advocate for equality and inclusiveness while providing valuable support and life-saving services. Whereas since 2008, the LGBTQ Center has served an average of 10,000 people every year through counseling services, LGBT competency training to police, hospitals, and school districts, human trafficking prevention, services for homeless youth and families, veterans and active duty military support, and so much more. Whereas healthy and dynamic communities in the U.S. see LGBT centers as the drive behind business development, safety, inclusiveness, and pride in our country's heritage and diversity. Whereas pride events in all cities contribute greatly to the local economy, including businesses, tax revenues, and tourism, as well as create a positive and inclusive image of the city. Whereas since 2016, the City of Oceanside has achieved a striking 100% ranking in the Human Rights Campaign Municipality Index. Based on the advocacy, commitment, and full collaboration of the LGBTQ Resource Center and city officials. Whereas the month of October is celebrated everywhere as National LGBT History Month, and October 11th is commemorated as National Coming Out Day. And whereas the North County LGBTQ Resource Center founded and has hosted Pride by the Beach events in Oceanside every year since 2007, and this year, Pride will be held on Saturday, October 12th from 11 to 5 p.m. at the Oceanside Civic Center Plaza and Pierview Way. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Peter Weiss, on behalf of the entire City of Oceanside, do hereby declare October 2019 as LGBT History Month in Oceanside, welcoming and encouraging all North San Diego County communities and LGBTQ families and individuals to join together in this wonderful Pride event celebration. Mayor Peter Weiss.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Esther Sanchez. Thank you, Mayor, and the rest of the council. We are honored. This means a lot, not just to us, but to the whole city of Oceanside. We were the first city 10 years ago to start doing the proclamation. It has a profound meaning. We have a great relationship with the police and with the organization and the representations here in Oceanside. I would say every year we dedicate a pride to some part of the population that suffer the most. Definitely our active duty and veterans, LGBT people that have been discriminated against for so many years, and they're still struggling with that. But also to the many people that are still victims of violence when it comes to attacking LGBT people, in particular trans women of color. On that note, I would like Lorna Barker to read a statement from all of us from Pride and from the LGBT Center, and then we let you go for the day. Thank you.
As we celebrate and recognize October as LGBTQ History Month, we are reminded of what makes California and Oceanside great. Our remarkable capacity to live together and advance together across every conceivable difference. This month of October, we stand with the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer LGBTQ community of Oceanside and North San Diego County, as they, on October 12th, declare their pride in who they are, in who we are, and who we love. This year marks the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots, the birth of Pride celebrations as we know them. Pride honors the fight that in 1969, the LGBTQ community in New York City mounted to protest the hostility and discriminatory laws and practices demanding acceptance and respect at great personal risk to themselves. The protest inspired pride celebrations across the world and sparked the LGBTQ rights movement in America till our latest civil rights conquests. Time and time again, our community has worked tirelessly for respect and equality. Our battles have been fought in the courts, from marriage to equality to demanding equal protection under the law. Our fight continues to this day as we combat discriminatory laws across the country. While there has been remarkable progress toward acceptance and equality in recent years, members of the LGBTQ community in the United States and around the world still face unacceptable levels of discrimination and violence. In California and Oceanside, we celebrate, yes, and support our LGBTQ community's rights to live our lives out. And the North County LGBTQ Resource Center has embodied this history, but also the resilience of the LGBTQ community in San Diego County.
Thank you very much. So I think she's taking a picture. And if I could have the council join me right now, please. We are going to have a check. I don't know if we can cash this check. We are going to have our Assemblywoman, Tasha Berner Horvath, join us up here.
I'll hold this and take that.
Thank you, everybody. It's a wonderful evening to be in Oceanside. My name is Tasha Berner Horvath. I'm your Assembly member. I represent the 76th Assembly District. Oceanside, hi! Oceanside, Carlsbad, Encinitas Vista, and Camp Pendleton. And when I got elected, one of my top priorities was to make sure our district got its fair share from Sacramento. And that's been far too long in coming. And so we were so honored and happy that in the state budget this year, we got over $10.5 million for our district alone, and $8 million of it is here in Oceanside for the beachfront improvement project. And I want to thank your city manager. I think we made a request for projects, and within 48 hours, she came back with this project. I know it's been approved for 10 years. You guys have put your money in. You're saying, we're doing our best to try to fund this. And we know this project will improve, give the Oceanside Police Department substation in the beachfront area. It will add coastal facilities. We are going to be adding restrooms. And we know when we improve this downtown area, we are driving economic development, we're increasing public safety, and we are making sure that there's access to our coastal resources, which we know how phenomenal it is that we live so close to the beach. We are so fortunate and lucky. And so that's one of the reasons we were able to get the money in the state budget, is because it's not just for Oceanside. You guys do a tremendous job making sure that Oceanside is here for the tourists from Orange County, Riverside County, San Bernardino, San Diego, Imperial County. They're all coming here to enjoy this wonderful project. So thank you so much. And on behalf of the State Assembly, I'd like to present you a check with $8 million. That's a lot of zeros. So we look forward to continuing our bipartisan effort. Please keep coming up with these great projects that really make this regional impacts. And we like to share, Jack. We like to share. Yes. So we'll continue working on it, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you in a very bipartisan fashion. Thank you so much.
And thank you very much for everything you've done. At this time, we will have a presentation on the 2020 census. So
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Joanne Fields. I am the Public Relations and Government, actually Public and Government Relations Director for the Asian Pacific Islander Initiative. And we have become partners with the U.S. Census to make sure we have a complete and accurate count in Census 2020. As we know, Oceanside is the third largest city in the county. And it's great that this is an example of making sure we have a fair share of our tax dollars coming back into the city with this presentation from our assembly member to bring the $8 million that this city deserves. But how do we know how much resources should come back? How much of the tax dollars come back? It's according to the census, and that only happens once every 10 years. So to those that don't know about Census 2020 or the decennial census, it's like taking a snapshot of the whole United States and counting every resident that is living in your city or in San Diego or throughout the states and the communities throughout the city. So how do we do this? We can't do this alone in the community. We have to connect with you in the government. So thank you for Cecilia and Councilmember Sanchez, who has been attending the SANDAG Census 2020 work group in San Diego to represent. We also have partnerships with our state representative and of course federal. So with that, I do want to share with you, I'm not sure if this can, the camera can show.
just put it down on that.
Oh, okay. So this is part of a national press conference that took place in Pasadena. If you didn't know, the second largest ethnic group in the county of San Diego is Filipino. Then we also have other Asian groups, and first, of course, Latino. So we are hard to count communities, and that's why we need to start now to do our outreach. And we do this through the media, through presentations at meetings like this, and to make sure that we reach our network with all of you, and also all the residents that are here. How do we know how many police officers that we need to cover the city? It's by the resident count. I also want to share with you our hard to reach census tracts. That's also known as HTCs. We have partnered with the United Way, and they came up with this list of hard to count census tracts. You may not notice the numbers now, but I can tell you the hard to count communities, or HTCs, are along the coast of Oceanside. And also where it looks like you're having some new development, housing development. These are additional census tracts. I left copies for all of you, Mayor, City Council, and the City Clerk, so that you can review. I know that there is also funding from SANDAG that is additional funding for outreach by the city of Oceanside. So you have funding from SANDAG, or actually I'm going to leave that to Connie to explain. There's funding from government, also to community groups. I'm representing a community group that has partnered with Bucas in Escondido along the 78 corridor to Oceanside with the Filipino American Cultural Organization that has the vibrant Philippine Independence Day celebration right here in your plaza. We will have a gala in December to highlight the Filipino community in Oceanside, but also start to deliver that message of having a complete and accurate count. There's just a few activities that I have mentioned. My colleagues, Connie and Juan, will talk about the other levels of government who are going to make sure that we all are counted here in Oceanside and the County of San Diego. So thank you for the time for this presentation, and we hope in a couple of months maybe we can get a proclamation proclaiming a complete and accurate count here in the city of Oceanside. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanne. Good evening, all of you mayor and city council members. It's certainly my pleasure to be here this evening to provide some information about Census 2020 and the role of the state. My name is Connie Hernandez. I'm the Regional Program Manager for San Diego and Imperial Counties, and I'm also working with as a Deputy Tribal Liaison for the 111 different federally recognized tribes throughout the state. As you know, that the census goal, as Joanne indicated, is to ensure that everyone is counted once, only once, and in the right place. There's a lot of different slides I'm going to go through, emphasizing specifically what I feel is important for our presentation tonight. We do have some time restraints, and we want to be respectful of that. What the one of the important things is we have the U.S. Census Bureau, and then we have the California Complete Count Committee. The California Complete Count Committee is a program that works under the auspices of the state of California. Initial funding was provided by Governor Brown in the form of $180 million was set aside. And this was set aside to count the hard-to-reach communities specifically in the state of California, to do outreach and education to those folks that traditionally do not participate. The other thing is when Governor Newsom came in, he added another $50 million to that and another $56 million to provide a media contract to get the word out in that fashion. So we have a ground program that we set up, and we call it our air game in terms of the media work that is accomplished. So the total is almost $290 million. So with that, what that represents is an unprecedented investment in that. And with that comes a huge responsibility, because this is taxpayers' money that we're working with. So the accounting process is very rigid in terms of how the monies are distributed and how the administrative costs are taken care of as well. So the importance between the two, the U.S. Census Bureau and the state, as the state provides the education, the outreach, works through various counties, cities, community-based organizations all over the state, and the U.S. Census Bureau administers a questionnaire, also forming partnerships throughout the state. And we have a representative from the U.S. Census Bureau that will come on shortly and give you additional information. The role that we have, as I indicated, is to create, communicate, identify, and develop, disseminate best practices and coordinate. And that again goes to the issue of working with the various counties. And what's at stake for the census, as Joanne indicated, and I'm sure Juan will go over this again, it's all about power in terms of congressional representation, reapportionment, and redistricting. And of course, the most important factor here is over $670 billion of federal funding is at stake. Without the right numbers, each of our cities throughout the state don't get the appropriate funding. I've already gone over the roles and partnerships. You've heard Joanne and I both reference hard to count. The hardest to reach is our target audience, and this, as you can see on the screen, includes Latinos, African Americans, Asian Americans, and Pacific Islanders, immigrants, refugees, LGBTQ, homeless individuals, all those folks that don't traditionally participate in mainstream activities, and this, of course, speaks to different issues that come up for their lack of participation. SWORD is just a platform, and with this, we tell the story about census in terms of everything that we do. I talked about the importance of accountability, goes into this system so we know where the monies are spent, who's getting what. Critical success factors, of course, comes into the basic understanding. It's almost like a get out the vote campaign. You know, we have to make it meaningful for folks, just the way it is in voting. What does my vote mean to me? How is it going to benefit me? It's the same thing with the census. How is my being counted going to be important? How is it going to impact my life? So I really urge each of you that you're in a position of power. You have constituents that listen to you, respect you. Get that word out in terms of the importance of that participation. The other thing, we have different phases, and I'm going to ask Juan to go over that in terms of the different phases that you'll get census information. For us at the state, we're in phase 2, and educating, motivating, and activate the partners that we have. We also have different sectors, and again, in respect of time, I can't go into detail, but that gives you a quick snapshot of the different sectors we're working with. Also, the importance are the trusted messengers. These are the budget. As I said, it's important we keep track of all of that. Going back again to the trusted messengers that I kind of flipped by, and that means if someone that you respect, such as yourselves, tells you the census is important, this is why it's important, please participate. So the state has allocated 10 different regions throughout the state. We're in Region 10, and we allocated funding to the Region 10 in this format. Sandag, who came in for the County of San Diego, received a total of $1,565,000. Imperial County received $284,000. And the United Way, who acts as our administrative CBO, that means that they work with community-based organizations all over Region 10 to get the word out, again, using trusted messengers. This comes to a total of $3,515,000 for the state. So we had that much to work with to divide up into all the municipalities in San Diego and Imperial County and the various CBOs throughout the county. And this basically explains the funding strategy that we have. And what you can do right now, and I can't overemphasize this enough because you folks are in a position of influence, a position of power to help get the word out to your individual districts so that you can continue to do the great work here in Oceanside. You can designate a census coordinator and lead person, and I'm sure you've already done that. I know Councilwoman Sanchez has been participatory in the local complete count committee, build partnerships and collaborate with the counties, the cities, the local complete count committee, local community-based organizations, and foundations. Even though that sounds like a ton of money, when you start dividing it, it really is not enough to do the work of sometimes door-to-door canvassing, getting that word out, and you all know how expensive media is. So it's a huge expense. And identify your own hard-to-count population per census tracts, and we have that information available, both the state and the feds. Also identifying existing outreach methods and tools. Sometimes you don't have to create a new event, you just piggyback on what's already being done and have a census booth at that event. Also connect with me. I'm your local state regional program manager. I'll be able to provide information on what's going on organizationally, what's going on in terms of funding as well. So I've been tapped on the shoulder. That means I'm running out of time. So just again, just get the word out. This is why we're here. We make presentations like this all over the county. We're at special events. We work with media groups. We work with community-based organizations. This happens once every 10 years. This is our last shot for the next 10 years. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I guess we have more.
Before I speak, I just want to quickly introduce myself. I'm Juan Montes, Partnership Specialist with the U.S. Census Bureau. I want to show you a clip of what we're trying to accomplish, not only locally, but nationally, and how important it is to be all-inclusive and to ensure that everybody counts once, only once, and in the right place.
I respond could a new health clinic benefit neighborhoods? The 2020 census will inform these decisions and shape how billions of dollars will be distributed to communities like yours each. Can one girl in a small town, an architect in a major city, and a suburban high school coach shape the future of the United States? Yes, they can. Because every 10 years, the census gives us that power. You can shape your future by responding to the 2020 census. Where do we need new roads to make our lives easier? Where will new school programs help our children thrive? Where could a new health clinic benefit neighborhoods? The 2020 census will inform these decisions and shape how billions of dollars will be distributed to communities like yours each year. And in 2020, you can respond to the census online, by phone, or by mail. It's easy, safe, and important. Make sure you and everyone you know is counted. Now is the time for you to get involved. Your community needs you. Together, we can educate and excite, inspire, and make sure every voice is heard. Together, we can shape our future.
Good evening, council members and staff. Again, my name is Juan Montes. I'm a partnership specialist with the U.S. Census Bureau. More importantly, I'm here today as a member of our local community. I too am a resident of Oceanside and have been for the last 20 years, off and on since 1998. Urging everyone to join the census in the state of California and the city of Oceanside in counting once, only once. Counting everyone once, only once, and in the right place. We can do this by engaging, supporting, and creating effective partnership with trusted messengers and local leaders in our communities. Although the census is planned nationally, it all happens locally. To accomplish an accurate census, 4 things must occur. 1, establish where to count. 2, motivate people to respond. 3, initiate operations to count the people. And 4, release the results to the census. Since 1790, we have counted every resident. Our Constitution mandates that our population is counted every 10 years. Second, it's about representation that includes the reapportionment of 435 congressional seats. And lastly, but certainly not least, it's about federal funding. $675 billion that come back to the state and local governments for vital services based on our census figures. Vital services such as police, fire, schools, hospitals, daycares, to include an accurate estimate of the population in case of any natural disaster. You're going to receive 1 invitation and 4 reminders when the census is approaching. The first invitation is going to be by mail, and it's going to give you an ID that allows you to access it online and respond online, which we're hoping a large amount of the population will do. The second is going to be a reminder letter right around mid-March, letting you know that the census is still around the corner. And we're encouraging everyone to engage. You're going to receive a reminder postcard right around the end of March into the beginning of April. April 8th to the 16th, you're going to receive a letter and a paper questionnaire, just in case we didn't catch you on the first round, with online response. For the first time, we have multiple ways of self-responding. We're going to have internet, phone, and in paper with the questionnaire. We're even going to have the ability for people to phone in and respond that way as well. We're in the process of establishing kiosks at community service centers, so if those hard to reach, hard to count people are afraid to respond, we'll give them a safe place for them to reach out and respond to us. And I just want to clarify that the census is safe. We cannot and we will not share any information, any personal information with any other agency or law enforcement agency. Every employee at the census has sworn an oath to protect and safeguard all respondents' information. And if we do violate that order, or if we do violate and or break that oath, we will be sentenced to 5 years in prison and or $250,000 fine. So we take it pretty seriously. All records are confidential and will not be released for approximately 72 years. And that's usually right around the time everyone goes on Ancestry.com to find out where they're coming from. On a different note, and I'm sorry it's overlapping like that, we are hiring. We do want to hire people within those census tracts to become those local messengers, to become that continuity between the census and the city within those tracts. We do offer competitive rates for the County of San Diego. If you do have any further questions, my information along with my partners' information is up on the screen. I would like to take this time to thank Councilmember Sanchez and Cecilia for all her help and support. We've been doing a pretty good job so far in the city of Oceanside moving forward, and with their help, we have already filled my calendar with a significant amount of events for the end of September and through the month of October and going into November with the turkey trot. So, thank you very much for your time.
Councilmember Sanchez.
I just wanted to add that with respect to the Oceanside's response on this, Cecilia, where are you? Cecilia is going to be doing a presentation within a month or month and a half to show the council and the public what the campaign is looking like, including our own kind of T-shirts and things to get the word out. I would like to say that include that hard to count communities include 0 to 5, ages 0 to 5, along with veterans, homeless, and our communities of color. But we do have a really good campaign going on, and I want to thank you, all three of you, for your work in Oceanside. We were severely, severely undercounted 10 years ago, and this time we're going to definitely get an accurate count. We all count. Yes, we all count. And we're going to get the money that we need, that we ought to get from the feds. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to apologize to the council for taking almost 3 times as long as the allocated 15 minutes, and I appreciate your indulgence in these important issues. With that, I would like to, because I think there's a lot of people here for the pool item, just so you know, for purposes of procedure, we are going to consolidate the 2 items. 14 is the award of the construction contract for the Aquatic Center, and 15 is the financing for the Aquatic Center. We have to consider the financing before we consider the construction contract. So for purposes of the presentations, there'll be a staff presentation at 6 o'clock on item 15, immediately followed by staff presentation on 14, followed by public input, and then council consideration of the 2. And so with that, we'll go to Mr. Mullen.
Thank you. I'll give the closed session report. The council did meet at 3:30 in closed session. There was no meeting on item 1. Item 2, conference with real estate negotiator involving the property located at 704 Pierview Way. That's the Oceanside Museum of Art. Under negotiations are price and terms for the lease of the property. Item 3, conference with legal counsel on the initiation of litigation in the matter of 1 case. Council did meet on that item as well. There is no action under the Brown Act to report on item 2 and 3. And again, there was no meeting on item 1.
With that, we'll go to the consent calendar, which are items 5 through 13. Do we have any?
Public has pulled item number 11.
11?
Move approval for balance.
So we have a motion and a second on the balance. Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Item 11.
Our only speaker is Jamie Thompson for item number 11.
Good evening. My name is Jamie Thompson. We met about this project, I think it was back in February, where Esther had asked some great questions of the city to get it clarified that there would be funds available in June for that. I wanted to find out, now that this vote has happened, this means that this project will go forward. And also, what is the deadline that the city council is going to put on the city to make this happen, since we've been coming to the city for 10 years on this issue and being promised that the developer was going to actually take care of this. But when it came to February, it turned out that the developer was only putting in a very small portion of money towards this project, and this project actually could have been done many years ago, based on the very minimal amount of money that they were putting in on it. The developer, however, was putting in full funds for another traffic light at another location, which is not involved with that direct area of that project. So I wanted to find out what the deadline is that the city council is going to propose on the city to have this issue resolved.
Thank you. Is that it?
No more public speakers.
Mr. Thomas, would you like to address that, please?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. The project, item number 11 for the Rancho del Oro and San Ramon traffic signal, has been part of this fiscal year's capital improvement budget. So the item before you tonight is to allow the bids to go out, to authorize the city engineer to call for bids. Our time frame is to bring the bids back to City Council for approval in November. At the end of December, we should have a contract in place. At that point, the contractor will order the traffic signal poles. We should be completed by the end of May, depending on fabrication time for the traffic signal poles. So we intend to be done with this by the end of the fiscal year.
Thank you.
In the ground by the end of the year.
So with that, I will move approval of item 11. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Are there speakers on item 18?
There are currently 9 speakers on item 18.
Okay, we'll go to 19, which, Mr. Mullen?
19 is the second read and adoption of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Oceanside amending Chapter 13 of the Oceanside City Code by the amendment of Sections 13.1 and 13.16 to modify solid waste disposal and recycling requirements for food waste.
Deputy Mayor Feller?
Well, Mayor Weiss, we have a member of
Speaker?
the public.
Okay.
Speaker. Jimmy Knott?
Mayor, council members, Jimmy Knott, 127 Sherry Lane. I read the item, the staff report, before coming today. I also watched part of it on the last city council meeting. And I was a little bit unclear because it applies to commercial designated land. And since mobile home parks, like my park, is on commercial designated lands, I wanted to make sure that this will not apply to mobile home parks, because the questions is on, because of my reading of it, it seems to apply upon a designation of maybe the director of the department. I may be wrong in that, but I think that that should return to council and be an open agenda item for the citizens to bring forth any form of discussion to the city council. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
With that, we will take a short recess until 6 o'clock when we come back with the consolidated items 14 and 15. And at this time, we will start with our public hearing item, which will be the first part of the pool discussion. First will be the public hearing on the financing, then we'll have the staff presentation on the item 14, the construction contract. With that, I will open the public hearing and start with disclosures, please.
No contact. No, I'm just kidding. Everybody in town, thank you.
In the public, staff, public, this has been going on for a number of years, so there's been many opportunities for community input.
Hearings, staff, public, public via, thank you very much for all your emails and phone calls and just talking to me whenever I was on the street. Thank you.
Staff, public.
Jane? Honorable Mayor and council members, Jane McPherson, Financial Services Director. I'm here tonight to present for your approval the issuance of Oceanside Public Financing Authority 2019 lease revenue bonds for the purpose of building the El Corazon Aquatic Center. Staff recommends that the City Council and the Public Financing Authority adopt resolutions authorizing the execution and delivery of documents relating to the sale and delivery of not to exceed $28 million, the 2019 lease revenue bonds for, as I said, the El Corazon Aquatics Center project, and authorizing certain documents and directing certain actions in connection therewith, and approving a ground lease and a lease agreement and certain other documents in connection with the execution and delivery of documents relating to the sale and delivery of the 2019 lease revenue bonds. Tonight, we have our bond financing team here. Municipal Advisor Scott Smith from CSG Advisors Incorporated. Our underwriter, Sarah Brown, Managing Director of Stiefel, Nicholas and Company, Incorporated. Bond Counsel, Brian Forbath. Attorney from Stradling, Yoka, Carlson, and Roth. Renee Borges, our Treasury Manager here at the City of Oceanside. As I have Richard Hertz here, our Accounting Manager. I'm going to go through the background of how the evolution of the Aquatic Center. April 15th, 2015, City Council directed city staff to issue a request for proposal, conduct the required studies, begin the entitlement process for the El Corazon Aquatic Center, and initiate the process to restructure the current 2015 Oceanside Community Development Commission's certificates of participation to maximize the funding for the El Corazon Aquatic Center. November 4th of 2015, City Council approved a professional service agreement with R&T Architects for the conceptual design, design development, and entitlement and environmental approvals for the El Corazon Aquatic Center project. Then in May 5th of 2016, conceptual design and environmental studies were submitted to the Planning Department to start the approval process. November 7th of 2016, the Planning Commission approved Resolution 2016-P44, considering an environmental impact report addendum, conditionally approving development plan and recommending to City Council approval of a zone amendment. In December 21st of 2016, City Council adopted an ordinance approving zone amendment for the El Corazon Aquatic Center project. January 4th, 2017, City Council approved Amendment 1 to the PSA with R&T Architects for the final design and engineering for the El Corazon Aquatic Center project. Spring of 2018, project construction documents were completed and the project was placed on hold, awaiting construction funding. June 6th, 2018, City Council approved the fiscal year 2018-19 Capital Improvement Plan program budget, including language stating that the City of Oceanside will build the proposed aquatic center at El Corazon, and the financing proposal for the aquatic center will come back at a later date. In November 28th of 2018, City Council approved the plans for the El Corazon Aquatic Center project. Staff identified the issuance of lease revenue bonds, potential use of park fees, and potential use of Measure X proceeds to fund the aquatic center. February 6, 2019, this year, council member item, city council, the council member item, where council directed staff on a 5-0 vote to develop a financing plan for the aquatic center, anticipating the issuance of bonds. Council gave direction to move forward with the pool project, anticipating the issuance of a bond rather than borrowing the funds from the portfolio or use the Measure X funds. April 24, 2019, City Council unanimously authorized staff to bid the project and approved a PSA with R&T Architects for project restart, bid support, and construction support services through the end of the construction. Staff report clearly indicated that the pool would be financed with bond proceeds. On this September 27th, 2019, the 2015 lease revenue bonds, that is the Civic Center, were paid in full. So what options were considered when we were looking at financing for the pool? We looked at bonding. We looked at the use of Measure X, using reserves, borrowing from the general fund reserves, use of park impact fees, naming policy possibilities, contribution, development projects, and/or funds from cannabis. So why did we decide to go with lease revenue bonds? It's the lowest cost financing option. Right now, we're getting historically low rates. Preservation of cash reserves. It provides flexibility for unforeseen future needs. So if we have something else we'll need for the capital, we're a big city. Pension liability changes, some major infrastructure catastrophe, and a possibility of recession. Using current available assets, such as the Civic Center, which we just paid off, as a security, avoiding capitalized interest costs. And in line with debt policy 200-14, by doing bonds, you spread the cost to current and future users. Why we are not recommending use of reserves or borrowing. Use of reserves would drain our set-aside savings to an unhealthy level and could violate current policies and could put the city at risk during an economic slowdown. The City Council Policy 200-06, Capital Projects Advance Fund, although it provides for the ability of the city to identify available excess fund balances to create a Capital Projects Advance Fund, there are not sufficient general fund reserves to finance the project in full. In addition, per policy, internal financing is for projects that have a defined repayment funding source, which the Aquatic Center does not. So, lease revenue bonds. This is how they work. The city and the Public Financing Authority will enter into a ground lease. The city will lease the Civic Center property to the authority. The city will then lease the leased assets back from the authority in exchange for base rental payments. And then the base rental payments are pledged to the owners of the bonds by the authority. The preliminary bond pricing, we're looking at for proceeds of $26 million, which you'll see in the next report, is the cost of the construction. The par value of the bonds will be $22.36 million and will be issued at an estimated premium of $0.06 million for total proceeds of $26.42 million. Their 30-year term, bond interest cost 3.46%. Interest-only payments are scheduled through fiscal year 22-23, and then substantially level payments thereafter. Payments will range from $520,000 to $1,044,000 for the first 3 years of interest-only payments. Thereafter, principal and interest payments are estimated to range from $1.45 million to $1.479 million. As part of the bonding process, we had to go in for a Standard & Poor's credit rating. And the rating describes the general credit worthiness of a city that issues debt. We received a AA rating for the lease revenue bonds. We did not receive the two above levels, the AA plus or AAA, the highest rating, due to the following factors. They would like to see a higher general fund reserves as a percent of total general fund expenditures. It was noted that other similarly sized cities have a higher fund balance as a percentage of general fund expenditures. The demographic metrics are a little lower than other AAA cities, particularly per capita effective buying income and per capita market value. The pension situation has worsened statewide since 2015. Although they offset this with the fact that we have a plan to pay its liabilities in the near term and has set aside money to do that with our Section 115 trust. That was another consideration. And now I'd like to hand it over to Sarah Brown, who will go over some market conditions.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. As Jane indicated, my name is Sarah Brown. I'm a managing director at Stiefel Nicholas. We are the underwriter for the proposed lease revenue bonds. Jane asked me to talk a little bit about the current market conditions. The slide that you see here shows the 30-year U.S. Treasury rate over the last approximately 4.5 years. Municipal bonds are trade off of an index or trade off of interest rates that generally move in tandem with the Treasury market. Since the Treasury market is the more commonly recognized fixed income market, I thought I'd start here with a look at where Treasury rates have been over the past 4+ years. As you can see through this period of time, the average has been about 2.8%. The current interest rate at the close today for the 30-year Treasury was 2.08%, so more than 70 basis points lower than the average. What's caused a lot of these, the market to go lower over the past really 10 months since the start of the calendar year has been a lot of the geopolitical events, most notably the U.S.-China trade talks. Then this next slide puts the 30-year Treasury that we were just looking at in the same axis as the 30-year Municipal Market Data Index. While municipal bonds all have very different rates based on their credit situation and other factors of liquidity and just market conditions, MMD, which is shown here, is an index that has been created for the municipal sector to allow it to allow us to track the general level of interest rates over time. MMD is made up of the most liquid AAA credits across the country, so it's considered kind of the benchmark that the municipal market uses to track the general level of interest rates. You can see here that through most of the time, the 30-year MMD has moved at the same interest rates roughly as the U.S. Treasury rates, and now, as of start of the month, MMD was sitting at 2%. Today, it closed at 1.89%. So again, much lower than when it started the year at 3.02%. It's more than 120 basis points, 110 basis points lower. And again, impacting that is just the general fixed income interest rates, as well as supply-demand factors in the municipal market. Finally, this is where I wanted to spend the most time on, and this shows that same 30-year MMD, but it's the yield curve. There's a MMD rate for every maturity between 1 year and 30 years. That's the line that you see there with the 1 year rate at just above 1%. And the 30-year rate, again, today closing at a 1.89. So you can see that the cost of doing a long-term bond is relatively low from a historical perspective. The bars that you see there is the range of where MMD has been in each of those maturities over the last 10 years. So you can see for the 30-year maturity, it's a high over the last 10 years of just about 5%. And a low, just slightly lower than where we are today at, I think, 1.85%. So as you can see here, if you go out to about year 6 or year 7, you can see that we're at historic lows for all of the maturities that we will be selling these bonds. This bond, is also influenced by the interest rate that, or the credit rating that we received from Standard & Poor's. As Jane indicated, the bonds didn't receive the highest possible rating, which would be AA+ for this particular type of bond issue. But the AA rating that it did receive is the second highest rating category. We expect extremely strong response to this bond issue, given many factors, including the city's strong debt policies, its management, and its fiscal prudence. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Finally, the recommendation. Staff recommends that the City Council and the Oceanside Public Financing Authority adopt resolutions authorizing the execution and delivery of documents relating to the sale and delivery of not to exceed $28 million, the 2019 lease revenue bonds for the El Corazon Aquatic Center project, and authorizing certain documents and directing certain actions in connection therewith, and approving a ground lease and lease agreement and certain other documents in connection with the execution and delivery documents relating to the sale and delivery of the 2019 leased revenue bonds.
Thank you. Thank you. And I would ask, I know there's a lot of emotion in the room, if you could please hold your applause to the very end. So with that, we'll go to Mr. Thomas, if you want to do the construction contract.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, City Council. Brian Thomas, City Engineer. Tonight, we'd like to present the award for the contract of the El Corazon Aquatic Center. Oh, wrong way. site plan of the proposed center, showing the Olympic-sized swimming pool, the splash pad, the children's pool, as well as the two buildings as part of the construction adjacent to the existing community center. So staff recommends, subject to securing funds, that the City Council award a construction contract in the amount not to exceed of $19,868,000 to PCL Construction of San Diego. Staff also recommends that City Council approve a purchase order in the amount not to exceed $200,000 to Moody's for site preparation, remedial grading, and replacement of unsuitable soil prior to the start of actual construction of the pool. Moody's has been providing remedial grading at no cost to the city. However, due to unforeseen conditions at the site, specialized equipment is now needed to complete the grading operations. Some of the key City Council direction and actions related to the construction, you've seen these in Jane's presentation, but on April 15th, 2015, direction to staff to begin the process to build a new community pool. On November 7th, 2016, the Planning Commission approved a resolution considering an environmental impact report addendum and conditionally approved development plan D16-0007. On December 21st, 2016, zone amendment ZA 16-00001 was adopted. On June 6, 2018, the fiscal year 18-19 capital improvement budget approved, including language that the city would build the aquatic center. On November 7th, 2016, the Planning Commission approved the resolution considering the EIR addendum and conditionally approving the development plan. On December 21st, 2016, the zone amendment ZA 16001 was adopted. On November 28th, 2018, City Council approved the plan, specification, and estimate for the project. Staff identified the issuance of lease bonds, park fees, and Measure X as potential funding sources. During the April 24th, 2019 City Council meeting, Council decided with a 5-0 vote to authorize staff to bid the project. On July 18th, 2019, notice inviting bids was posted along with a pre-qualification process. The pre-qualification process helps speed up the back-end documents so that we could bring this quicker to City Council for award. In essence, the general contractors and subcontractors were required to pre-qualify. The general contractors were required to provide references, financial statements, bonding statements, and licensing information, while the subcontractors were required to provide all of this information with the exception of the financial statements. Bids were received and opened on September 12, 2019, with 3 pre-qualified general contractors providing bids. PCL Construction of San Diego provided the lowest responsible bid in the amount of $19,868,000. California Commercial Pools Incorporated of Glendora came in second with a cost of $20,638,473, and Hensel Phillips of Irvine came in with the third highest responsive bid at $20,777,702. Received bids were higher than our estimated cost of about $18.5 million. Reasons for that were perceived tariffs, changes in prevailing wages, and a very vibrant construction market. The bids received are deemed competitive and responsive. Our anticipated schedule: contract approval, October 9th, document review and approval, in which we would secure the contracts from the contractor, would go through November 8th. We are planning a groundbreaking ceremony on October 30th. We will have a pre-construction meeting in the middle of November, November 18th. The start of construction is scheduled to be December 1st. We hope to complete construction by April of 2021, with the commissioning of pool equipment and everything during April and May of 2021, and a grand opening anticipated June of 2021. This is our cost breakdown as outlined in the agenda report. The pool construction itself is just a little over $11 million. The east building is a little over $5 million. And the west building is about $3.4 million. Our total construction is $19,868,000 with our contingency of just under $4 million for a total construction cost of $23,841,600. With the water fees, our architect, engineering, construction support, construction management and inspection, our admin allocation, the furniture, fixture, and equipment allocation, the internet technology, low voltage, CCTV access, and materials and supplies, that rounds out to $26 million. So our recommendation is subject to securing funding that the City Council award a contract in the amount not to exceed $19,868,000 to PCL Construction of San Diego. Staff also recommends the City Council approve a purchase order in the amount not to exceed $200,000 to Moody's for site preparation, remedial grading, and the replacement of unsuitable soil.
Thank you. With that, we will go to the public.
We have 2 microphones. As I call your name, please make your way down to the next available microphone, and I believe we have some seats in the front if you would also like to wait as well. We have our first speaker is Tony Davis, to be followed by Garrett Rutz, to be followed by Nick Ritchie, to be followed by Midori Simovich.
Hello, Council. I'd like to start by saying all of the meetings that they listed, all of those meetings, I was at all of them. It was probably maybe a year before that when a large group of us were sitting at Brooks Pool watching our kids swim or play water polo or whatever it is they're doing to get good exercise. And we were like, what year was this pool built in? Because sometimes you sort of wait and think that some of the lifeguards are shoveling coal into the corner box over there because it seems old. And I was finally able to find the plaque on the wall, and it was in the 50s. Start doing your numbers on that. We're 60 plus years on the last construction of any pool in this city. So with that said, I think we've done our diligence. I think these guys have all worked super hard. These guys are some heavy hitters over here with the money, and I'm hoping they do a good job, which it sounds like they have. And I think it really comes down to this. It's time to not kick this can down the road any further. It's time to make a decision on this. And you see a lot of people behind you. And I'd like to say to the people behind me, how many of you have been here like me for all the meetings and are ready to get a pool for the city of Oceanside? Please stand up. Stand up. Stand up. So that's just a piece of who wants the pool, and you've done all this work. It's time to finish it. It's time to add this feature to El Corazon. You've got the soccer fields, you got the senior center. This pool will be really great with the sunset in the distance and kids getting tired and learning great lessons and becoming lifeguards and going on to colleges and winning awards. Who knows? Maybe we can get a gold medalist. We can work hard. That's on Scott Wagner over here and his people. But you know, let's get this done. Let's pull the trigger, or put your stamp on saying no to this if that's what you're going to do. So thank you.
My name is Garrett. I live right here off of Ditmar. Last night I drove into Los Angeles around 8:30, and getting off the freeway, I drove through a neighborhood that was pretty run down. Most of the streetlights didn't work. Most of the shops were closed. But as I was driving down, there was this bright spot on the corner of the street, and as I drove by, it was a public park, and it was full of kids. Some were playing basketball, some were playing soccer, and on the streets there wasn't anybody. There was some homeless, but all the kids gathered at that park. And it reminded me that we still have some youth here in Oceanside that need public parks. They need a place where they can go and have an opportunity to make the right decisions and move forward and make forward progress. The pool here at Brook Street is very old. It's run down, and it does serve a purpose, but it's time for the city to move forward. We're developing fast here in Oceanside. We have new people coming in, but I think it'd be foolish of us to not continue to build within, not just here in downtown, but throughout all of Oceanside. And so I really implore you to make the right decision and to approve this project. Thank you.
And I would ask again if you could just please hold your applause so we can get through the speakers. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Nick Ritchie. You are responsible for our city's financial well-being. You hold the keys to our financial future. The bond for El Corazon does nothing to guarantee the city's financial well-being. In fact, should you choose to move forward with borrowing $26 million for a non-necessary item, after the 30 years, the citizens of Oceanside will have paid near $35 million. I didn't get an invitation to the burning of the bond note on September 27th. I sure wish I would have. It would have been quite a joyous celebration. And I know I won't be here for the burning of that bond note in 30 years either. Additionally, should we ever have a serious financial need, even though the slide presentation, as we said that it allowed flexibility, but should we have a serious financial need in the future, having already floated a bond, we would not qualify for a second bond. It is my understanding that yearly maintenance for El Corazon is unfunded. There is no established funding source at this point in time. That alone should be a red flag for anybody. RAID Measure X funds, is that what we're going to do? Is that how we're going to pay this? How is this going to be funded? Once built, approximately $1.2 million will be spent on maintenance every year. Will room rental, pool rental, and swim lessons fund this? I don't believe so. I urge you to delay your vote until you have exhausted all alternative funding. Did you look into privatization? It's a possibility. If you wisely choose to delay, the only thing lost would be time. We could possibly save millions of dollars for the taxpayers of the citizens of Oceanside without any indebtedness. Please consider funding alternatives. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Midori Simovic, to be followed by Dirk Akema, to be followed by Jan DeRogers, to be followed by Jimmy Knott.
Good evening. My name is Midori Simovic, and some of you already know me. And instead of talking the same thing over and over, I would like to thank Council Member Sanchez for bringing this item to the table when it was not even an item for a long time. And then I would like to thank Councilman Feller for his steadfast support for this project. And I would like to thank Mayor Weiss for his loving support for all these years that we endured and patiently waiting for this to happen finally. And I would like to thank Mr. Kime and Mr. Rodriguez for the new participation in this long-awaited project. And I trust that you all know how many years we have been patiently waiting for this to happen. So with that feeling of thanks, I will just leave it to you. Thank you.
Dirk Akema.
Dirk Akema, 30-year resident of Oceanside.
In listening to the gal who did the bond analysis, there were several red flags that came up that I think the City Council should be aware of and be sensitive before they vote on this. One is the poor credit rating that the City of Oceanside currently enjoys. It will only get worse if we enter into this agreement. It was stated that we don't qualify for the AA or AA plus rating. It's because we have we don't the general fund that the city has right now is not up to standards of other cities. We shouldn't consider ourselves to be similar to other cities such as Carlsbad that have these type of facilities, because they have much different financial opportunities and financial ability that they have. I also think that putting our civic center encumbered by a land lease for these bonds is physically irresponsible, because it doesn't give us the flexibility to use that in critical situations that might occur in the future. So I think that the city has to take a real hard look. And as Nick just said, there's no harm in delaying this. I just think that there's so many red flags that are popping up here at the end that the intentions of building a pool are great, but the reality is that it's a very expensive thing. There are other needs that the city has right now, and I think that you have to be aware of your priorities before you agree to such a financial commitment. Thank you.
Jan DeRozier, to be followed by Jimmy Knott, to be followed by Sherry Mackin, to be followed by Joan Bachman.
Mayor and City Council members, my name is Jan DeRozier. I've been a 35-year resident of Oceanside. I believe this is necessary. I believe that we have been talking about this for over 20 years. We've looked at Brook Street, we've looked at Marshall Street. It keeps on coming back that we can't do anything for that. And priorities, our priority is the future. Our priority is the youth. Our priority is what we are leaving as a legacy for the future. I urge you to vote yes on this. We have professional opinions that it is worthy. We have a very professional staff who is recommending it to you. You have voted unanimously up to this point for this pool. Now you're going to turn around and say no? I don't think so. Let's make it a unanimous vote again. And Michelle, thank you so much for your years of service to the city, and we'll miss you. Thank you.
Mayor, council members, Jimmy Knott, 127 Sherry Lane. I like the idea of the pool and also the other amenities, but there also needs to be some clarity with the public and some open honesty. What is the average cost per homeowner for the repayment of these loans? Is there any provision for a public-private partnership in any portion of the development, building, or operation? And is there any flexibility within any of these agreements for such? Is there or has there been a public survey, and what is the results of that public survey? Are there any plans for the maintenance and operations budget? And what are those plans, and what is that cost? What type of bonds really are they, and what are the conditions of use of those bonds? What is the priority of users of the pool? Will it be Oceanside first, or will it be just for those who can afford it? Can you consider charging the school district for the use under a quid pro quo agreement that they offer the fields of their schools and availability for Oceanside sports in exchange for access to the pool, and make it a mandate that they do such or no availability. Has there been any idea of separating any segments of this project for other sources of funding? The Olympic pool, the offices, the general hall, etc., bifurcating those to see if there's other sources of funding that could pay for this. And is there any ideas on an entry fee and availability for those low-income alternatives? And the question that was brought up by your staff about soil suitability. Now, I know that Peter was involved, Mayor Weiss was involved years ago with trying to extract a tractor, a skip loader that was really stuck out there. I remember that was really a rough one. What does that have in store with us? That needs to be disclosed. That needs to be openly discussed. Those are a few questions that need to be disclosed to the public and how we're going to be handling those. Thank you.
Mayor and Council, Sherry Mackin, 1469 Moreno Street. I wholeheartedly support staff's recommendation. Let's build this pool. With regards to Marshall and Brook Street pool, keep them open. Our neighbor to the south built an aquatic center and continues to keep their Monroe Street pool open with plans to remodel it. So if they can do it, we can do it. And they have far less citizens as we do in Oceanside. Thank you.
Joan Bachman, to be followed by Jane Marshall, to be followed by Teresa Masters, to be followed by James Hill.
Joan Bachman, representing Friends of El Corazon. As you know, this pool was promised long ago. The staff list started around the beginning of the specific plan adoption, which was 2009. A group worked on it for much longer before that. So we have been waiting a very, very long time for this pool. Imagine future generations wondering, why didn't you build this when it was cheap? I think John Daly's brought up Oceanside Boulevard, only cost $50 million. So this is now the cheap time. When I bought my house, it was 14.8% interest. This is the time to do it in this way. You know, money can always be regained, but time can never be regained. And we have whole generations going through our city. We have a lot of swimmers here today. We also had an event, a kite flying event on our park on Saturday. We had over 90 kids making and flying kites. We also had a whole bunch of soccer players weigh in, and people signed up to receive more information, and they also started signing this piece of paper here. These are soccer players. They want a pool. The swim kids want a pool. The soccer players want a pool. And we've had it on our brochure for a very long time. So please, plan for the future now. Now is the time. This is the best time to do this, and the need is great in our city. So our position for Friends of El Corazon is to fund the construction now and continue to look at park financing over time for more balanced funds. We have requested that many different ways to staff and to the council. So that is our position. We do want it funded now. All these kids want it. All these adults want it. We're behind other cities, and there is no time like the present. So please vote yes now. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Jane Marshall, 30-year resident. I also am asking for a yes vote on this. I believe that the El Corazon area is the future. It's the heart of Oceanside. And along with the soccer fields and aquatic center, some other sports activities will really put us on the map, kind of like the Central Park of New York, but it'll be El Corazon of Oceanside. So let's do this, not delay. Costs will only increase. We're at a historic low with interest rates. All the moons and stars are aligning. All we have to do is say yes. Thank you.
Everybody, Teresa Masters, Oceanside resident.
I was here when this property was gifted to the city of Oceanside. I was present with the various suggestions made. I am present with things going on that had not been in the original plans, the commercialization, the refusal of the hotel and the golf course, which would have brought in a lot of income. So now you're sitting on a civic project, and yes, you can get a bond for it. You spent a lot of money on surveys and potential. How much money could that have been towards keeping this lower? But since we haven't been there before, can we stop jacking around and getting on with it? I see a barn door opening where apparently it was previously closed. Would you please tell me why there's discussion now? And I thought you've already resolved everything and that we're here today for finalization. Can we do something that we plan on doing without thinking it to death or delaying it to a greater expense? Start acting in for what you're representing. We, the people of Oceanside, get something done and stop paying for surveys. Thank you.
Our next speaker is James Hill, to be followed by Diane Nygaard, to be followed by Kevin and Vanessa McCarthy, to be followed by Mara Davis.
James Hill. I'm from the airport district. I am so excited that we are potentially doing this. I mean, a pool for Oceanside is going to be fantastic. It's finally great to have this kind of project brought up, before the Oceanside City Council, because I've been here and I've spoken to everybody, and some of the others may have heard me, and it's not usually on a good subject like this. It has to do with something else. I'm part of Safe Oceanside. Something like this is going to help our whole city. And how it helps our city, it's going to bring revenue in from the whole state, potentially nationally. And that just doesn't do anything. That just doesn't do something for the city or the pool itself, but all the business owners right here in Oceanside, it affects them as well. All the great restaurants that we have right here, the new hotels we have that are in downtown, it's going to bring a lot of excitement, as well as the airport area where they're going to develop over there and bring in new prospective people coming into our city. It's very exciting. I grew up in an aquatic center. I grew up going to a community pool. From that community pool, I got into springboard diving. If that community pool wasn't around, or if it wasn't up to regulation, I probably wouldn't have gone to college on a full ride scholarship to a Division I school. Now, having the ability to give these kids, that don't have a regulation pool, the kids probably can't have any swim meets at these locations that we have here in Oceanside because they're the wrong size. They've always been the wrong size. And you can't do anything about it. You can't fix it. I guess you could fix it, but it costs a lot of money. Anyway, I'm happy to be here to talk about this. I hope it is passed. The money's figured out. There may be some alternatives out there as well. Listen to everything. Hopefully we can make a decision on this today. Let's move forward, get this done. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Diane Nygaard, a 20-year resident. Appreciate very much the years of hard work that so many people put in to get us here tonight. And I appreciate also that this project is really more than a pool. It also includes part of Phase 2 of the Senior Center project, allowing more opportunities for programming for our seniors and for the entire community. And appreciate very much that Moody's has been out there for months preparing that ground to be ready for a pool, saving us all millions of dollars in this project today. And that delay will only cost us more. think it's really critical this is approved tonight. We do ask that you consider a more balanced funding plan that could help reduce the amount of bonding. But please, 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 whatever you do, approve this project tonight. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kevin and Vanessa McCarthy, to be followed by Mara Davis, to be followed by Sheila Cada.
It's just me. My wife didn't come. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, City of Oceanside. I am a parent of 3 kids. Most of them have been in the aquatics programs here in Oceanside. OSC, Oceanside Swim Club. They're also in swim at the El Camino and water polo. So I've been taking my kids to the Brooks Pool for a while, and I think everybody knows that that pool is dilapidated. I actually think that there's a risk to our kids. The area that it's in is like an accident waiting to happen, in my opinion. It's dark at night. When I was at that pool the other once, you can't see, just even backing up, you cannot see the cars or the people in the parking lot. So you're looking at some kind of liability there, in my opinion, for having a pool in an area that is not lit properly, a pool that is run down. Maybe there's some hazards at the pool. The pool itself is very old. We all know that. So it's my opinion, and I think everybody really, that the Brooks Pool should probably be shut down. It should be either rezoned and the city should redevelop that area, or it should be sublet to some kind of private enterprise. If you're looking for money, maybe the way to get money is to save money. You must be spending money on operating the Brooks Street Pool. And for that matter, Marshall is another pool that is a terrible pool for the kids and anybody to swim at, because the neighbors are constantly complaining anytime anybody uses that pool. They're just constantly upset with everybody who comes there because there's no parking. So we need a pool. So I have to ask, and I hope you won't take offense to this statement, but who's leading the city that we don't have any focus on the youth of this city? I'm not interested in the youth of all the people that come for the soccer programs over in the huge soccer facility we have for everybody else but Oceanside. I'm interested in something for this city, for our kids, and for our seniors, and for our adults who need to get more exercise. Nobody's going to go to Brooks or Marshall, but they might go to an actual facility that is worthy of, going to and relaxing and having a good time and getting some exercise. So I really think that the city by now should have been looking for financing, and that should take priority. That really should. I don't know why it hasn't taken priority. Well, am I out of time? I got one last question. How is it that Vista and Carlsbad can take on these projects and complete them? And a city of Oceanside, which is twice the size of those cities, can't complete that task.
Thank you for your comments.
I really obviously think that this is something that this city and all the people here should do. Thank you.
All right. Our next speaker is Mara Davis, to be followed by Sheila Cada, to be followed by Warren Jacobs.
Hi, my name is Mara Davis, and I'm a 12th grader at El Camino High School. I'm the youth everyone keeps talking about. But I started the fight for a pool when I was 12. I'm now 17. I've been waiting a very long time for a proper pool to call my own and my home. A pool that will nourish me and my friends to become better players and better swimmers. I've been swimming at Brick Street since I was about 10, and it's kind of hard trying to improve there when it's 33 yards. That's not really a great number to base your times off of. But my water polo team for EC won CIF Division I my sophomore year. No one expected that. No one. We are not Cathedral Catholic. We're not Bishop. We're not a big, rich school from a big, rich city. So it was a big surprise that the kids from Brook Street Pool, the bathtub, could actually win something. Imagine if we actually had a proper pool that would nourish our program. We could improve. We have the talent, we have the ethic, and we have the dedication to get to where we need to be. Can the city please provide us with a place so we can build this and become better? Imagine what we could do. It's not fair that just because we're younger and we're kids, oh, the kids don't know the budget, the kids don't know. We do. We just want a place to go and swim and have fun with our sport. I mean, I'm going to college for water polo, and I'm sad to say that I really can't credit Oceanside for building me as a player. I played at Carlsbad, I played at Vista. I wish I was able to say, thanks to Oceanside Club Team, thanks to Oceanside City for our pool, that I'm a better player and that I'm here and I'm succeeding in my life because I get to go to college for water polo and get educated just because water polo brought me to a school and helped me with scholarships. But please consider it. Sincerely from the youth of Oceanside. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sheila Cada, to be followed by Warren Jacobs.
I'm Sheila Cada, and I'm a swim team water polo mom. And let me tell you, we need for the kids to have Olympic-sized swimming pool for them to swim. You guys need to approve this. This keeps the kids off the street. It gives them choices. They get to get scholarships. They get to go to Stanford. They get to go to Chico. You need to do this. You need to say yes. It really helps the kids. It helps the people. It is valuable. It's time to do it. Do it, you guys. I'm a water polo mom. I went all over the United States with my daughter, and she really disappointed me because she made it to the Junior Olympics, and it cost us a lot of money. But you guys, do this.
Good evening, Warren Jacobs, 1547 Lucky Street. I've only been a resident of Oceanside for a year and a half. And prior to that, I lived 28 years in Cardiff. And I know it took many, many years, and I'm so stoked to be here, by the way. I'm so happy. But it took so long for Encinitas to put together their park right there off the freeway at Manchester. I mean, it took so long that my kids actually were very young when the process started, and they were gone to college by the time it was done. My son still skates there when he's in town. I can't speak to the swimming pool or the swimming community. I'm a longtime soccer coach, 36 years as a competitive soccer coach. And the Corazon fields in soccer are state famous. Everyone wants to play there. They're the best fields in Southern California. Silver Lake has a facility that's decent. The polo fields are rubbish. There's no other place. Everyone wants to come to the soccer tournaments that are there. When State Cup is there, everyone is eager to be there. They're stoked. No one wants to go to Lancaster. And so I'm telling you, if the pool is anything like I've heard tonight, it's going to be an attractive force in the aquatic community that's going to become famous statewide. People are going to want to come here to swim and to train. I know that Mission Viejo has become, I've subscribed to Sports Illustrated for 40 years, and Mission Viejo is famous in the aquatics world just because I've read about it so many times, how many world-class swimmers they've developed there. I mean, this could happen in Oceanside. There's absolutely no reason why it couldn't. But I'm stoked that it's going to happen. I hope you guys make it happen. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers that would like to address this item?
Sorry, just want to say a few quick things. Jordan Dietz, 2022 Ocean View Road. Been a resident of Oceanside for almost 20 years. Just as somebody who grew up in Carlsbad, and I went to Carlsbad High School and really enjoyed the city of Carlsbad. When we moved to Oceanside, obviously, part of that was a financial decision, right? I love the city of Carlsbad, but it's very expensive, very hard to stay there. And one of the things that I noticed as a stark contrast from Carlsbad to Oceanside, and this isn't to make you guys feel bad, is just Carlsbad to me seems like a futuristic city that's always thinking about what's ahead and what's to come and how to bless their residents. And Oceanside doesn't always feel that way. And sometimes I'm kind of embarrassed to be a resident of Oceanside specifically for that reason. I don't feel like we're always thinking ahead how we can make this city greater than it already is. And I think the saying, you have to spend money to make money, kind of applies here, right? I know it's hard to pull the trigger on a huge project like this, spending millions of dollars figuring out the financing, all that kind of stuff. For my friend here in the front row who had some concerns about how you guys were going to use the project and who was going to be able to use it and different things like that, I think all those things can be addressed after the money is approved. You guys can figure out the details, but I want to be proud of this city. I want to not only be a resident, but someone who says, I love being here. I love where the city government is taking us, and I think this pool is a fine example of taking us forward and helping us take a step to rise up to the level of some of the neighbors around us. Thank you.
Cindy Rocco, South Oceanside. I just want to say, well, first of all, thank you to Jane and the whole entire finance department. I think you guys are excellent, and I know some people over at Stiefel. So, but anyway, and I know this is directed towards looking at the funding for this particular project, the pool. But I know this won't be popular, but if I were to look at the city right now and I was to think of economic sustainability, the pier is our number 1 economic driver in the entire city. The Pier View Bridge requires approximately $22 million to bring that 1920-something structure up to par. We're doing Band-Aid repairs, although we are doing the repairs that are sustaining for now, but the bridge on the wood part, the bridge part is kind of patchwork. Anyway, I think if it was to be my choice as far as the better decision for our future and our economic sustainability at this point in time would be to commit the funds towards the Pier View Bridge. And it's just my own consideration, and it's just how I look at things. And then I think if we're doing a double A with Moody's, and this is being contingent on our property, and then what happens when we make a decision to move forward to say, we're going to do the Pier View Bridge? Voters don't vote in Measure X for you. Now, how will we be positioned in the bond world as far as having now a 30-year bond, 22 million request? I'm going to say probably within 5 years, we're going to have to take action on that pier, but I'm not an expert. But I'm just wondering how competitive that would make us for attaining that level or that type of funding. And again, these are just my personal views from an economic perspective. Thank you.
And with that, we...
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you for letting me speak. Carolyn Kramer, 904 Leonard Avenue, Oceanside, representing citizens for the preservation of parks and beaches. There's a lot of us sitting in here in this room that were on the initial El Corazon committee, and all through the process, a pool has been the #1 issue to build, a pool. Timing is perfect. The bond market is down. It's the lowest it's been in the longest time. Now is the time. Fund it, and as everyone said, nobody wants to go to Lancaster. Nobody wants to go inland, whether it's soccer or the pool. So we can almost guarantee you, if you build it, they will come, and so will Oceanside. So let's get on it.
And with that, we will close the public input portion and come back to the council. Deputy Mayor Feller.
Thanks. Before we get started, did you hear any questions in there that you wanted to dispute? I noted one that I was wondering about, the statement about if there's a problem with a bond, you can't get another bond.
Deputy Mayor Feller, Brian Forbath from Stradlin Yaka. Yeah, I mean, the city's going to have access to the bond market. The AA+ credit rating is for an issuer credit rating. It's one of the highest ratings that you could possibly have. The city, from a credit standpoint, is very strong. The only cities that have a higher credit rating than the city of Oceanside are cities like Beverly Hills, Newport Beach, Carlsbad, Malibu, cities like Santa Monica. So you guys are in a very good spot financially from the credit rating perspective, and you're going to have access to the market even if you issue these bonds here today.
Thank you. I was involved. We had a former council member from about 30 years ago tell us that we were crazy for taking El Corazon or the sand mine, as it was called, even accepting it along with the 1.4 million. I think we proved that she called it a white elephant. And I think we've got much more than a white elephant out there at this point. I rode along on a bus tour of the area, and then we went to the country club facility and pasted stickers on the board on what we thought would be a nice to haves in El Corazon. That was in about '97. This is a pool was one of those things. They had a myriad of things, and it was incorporated with the El Corazon committee when they were formed. I will defend the pools that we have. I was at an event this morning with a group called Joy Connection, and it's a perfect pool, the Brook Street pool, and even probably the Marshall Street pool. That they're perfect for some types of use, and I think it behooves us to maintain them, upgrade them if we have to. And public-private partnerships can come in the operations of this. When FedEx said they were coming here, we pursued FedEx for naming rights, and it didn't happen then, but it's still out there. Those types of things are available to us. We ask a lot from our residents each and every year. They accept more traffic. It's a myriad of things. To put up with the changes that are happening in Oceanside, those are some great things that take a long time to develop. And why I think the pool is important as a need, it may not be a need, but it is a want, and it's almost like a gift back to them, even though, as a city we're paying for this. I think it's a gift back to them as far as their commitment to Oceanside. The young lady from El Camino, maybe you can come back and swim when it's time. Maybe be the new water polo coach in 20 years. We have a lot of work for operating, and maybe there is. I think we need to work on that as we go forward. The operations is a key, and connections, they're all there. The people that want this will participate, and I think we'll be able to make it work. As everybody's told me, that city to the south of us has a place that is busy all the time. What's the name of that city? Anyway. So what I'd like to do is say that this won't be the wrong size after June 2021. I'm going to make I need to know how we do the public hearing part and the.
I think the preference is for you to take action first on the financing plan, so item 15 should be the first motion.
Okay, so
and then after that's, assuming that's approved, we would move to item 14.
Okay, and so I'll make that motion to approve the funding. I believe that the funding is there. A lot of things can be done. I talked to the city manager. We can refinance the pool in 10 years. I mean, how many of us have refinanced their house to buy another house or other types of things? That's what we're doing here. And so, putting it simply, I just make the motion that we do staff's recommendation on item 15.
Second.
Okay, I would ask if you could please hold your applause. We still have council members that would like to speak, so this is by far from over. Councilmember Rodriguez. Thank you very much. Jack, I appreciate that motion. So early on, I would encourage us to listen to other council members. It's a very, very big decision. This is a very important decision, and I hope by the end, the majority of council can get on board with this, more than 3. I would like to see all 5 of us get on board to approve this project. And I think there is a way that we can fund this, build it, same amount of time, but save our city millions of dollars in tax money. And I want to go over that really quick. Thank you, residents, for coming out and speaking about the pool. I understand how important this is to you, and I have a feeling there's at least three on this dais that are going to vote yes, but I would like 5 of us to vote yes, and so that's what I'm going to attempt to encourage tonight. Thank you so much, staff, for all your hard work over the years in putting this together and dealing with new council members coming in and going out and changing of plans, and I can't even imagine the headache that this has been over the years. This thing should have been built 10 years ago. I have lost a lot of sleep over this aquatic center, and I've spent hours and hours dissecting the history all the way through to today, and I'm greatly concerned. We have over $200 million in unfunded pension liabilities that we have to account for, and that's only going to grow. From a public safety perspective, we are 2 fire stations short for our population, and that has forced our call times to be almost double what they're supposed to be. We have struggled to maintain and manage the current pools we have. Marshall Street is only open part of the time. We've heard a lot of complaints about Brook Street and the condition and its age. The City of Oceanside has not completed an in-depth study and prepared a plan to manage, operate, and market an aquatic center. If we can't do that with 2 pools we have now, what makes us think we're going to be able to do that with an aquatic center? Any successful business knows, I'm a business owner, you have to have a plan before you build. You don't just build and then figure out the plan later. That makes no logical sense to me. And I'm surprised we're even having money lent to us. Well, we have a great security. We paid it off finally. We're going to put it up for collateral. But no business out there moves forward on something without a plan. If I was here 15 years ago, when you guys came and this was what the community wanted, I would say, city manager, let's start saving. City manager, let's prepare a plan. But here we are today. It takes 3 votes to get anything done on this dais, and I'm shooting for 5. And I encourage my colleagues to work with me to save millions of dollars in your tax dollars to still build this pool. We can build it and we can get a 5-0, and I'm encouraging my colleagues to get on board. I have I came here today, to be honest with you, prepared to vote no. But I'm willing to meet in the middle with my colleagues on this dais, 2 of which are running for mayor. And I think that would be a great sign to the public that they want to build the pool. They've been here since the beginning of it, but they also want to be financially responsible. And that's what I'm after. I think we can do both today. A couple questions I have for staff. We have some debts being paid off in 2026. Is that correct, Jane?
Yes, that is correct.
And how much revenue will that free up annually?
And we have 4 debt instruments that will be paid off by 25-26 for $8.3 million.
So it'll free up $8.3 million, right? It's
Yes.
a little over 6 years from now. Okay, got
That
it.
is correct.
And we budgeted for $1.5 million a year in our 5-year forecast. Is that correct?
Yes, we did.
Okay. How much would we save if we paid off this aquatic center in 10 years?
We would save $11 million in interest alone.
Got it. So number one, if we give direction to staff to move forward on paying this off in 10 years, and we keep with our budget that's forecasted for 5 years, we can realistically set aside money and pay this off in 10 years and save $11 million. That alone sounds very smart, and we still accomplish the same thing. The second thing I would like to consider, I have a couple questions.
Mm-hmm.
How much do you currently have in the Parks and Rec account?
Currently, we have $6 million.
Okay. And how much of that is debt committed to projects that within the city that we've promised, we've moved on? I think there's like $2 million left over from my estimation.
Councilmember Rodriguez, Honorable Mayor, council members, you're right, $2 million left over.
Okay. So we have $2 million there. We have an infrastructure fund. I believe it has $7 million in it right now.
Yes.
That's set aside money for infrastructure. And then we also have a building fund for, like, if a refrigerator goes out at the fire station or what have you. How much do we have in that account?
In the building fund,
It's a 503.
oh, it's in 503?
I think I can answer that, 4.1.
4.1. Okay.
Didn't know which one he was talking about.
I would like to see us make a down payment. I think it's the responsible thing to do. You guys remember when 100% financing was around back in the day? What ended up happening? We had a crash, right? 100% financing. You fog a mirror, you get a loan. Well, we have some reserve funds. I think it's the responsible thing to do to put a down payment. A comfortable down payment. We're not touching our Healthy City Fund. We're not touching our portfolio. We're touching funds where there's additional monies. We just received $8 million from our state legislator. I am very thankful to her for that. And that $8 million was coming from our general fund. So now it's being replaced with that $8 million. So there's money there as well. I would like to see $7 million, which is a mix of some of the park, some of the, so we're not taking from everything. I would like to see a $7 million down payment and this loan paid off in 10 years. And I think that's smart planning, that's smart decision making, and it's what you deserve as Oceanside residents. I'd like to make a second motion, and I respectfully encourage my colleagues, feel free to say some things. I want us all to get on board with this aquatic center. They deserve it, and we deserve, and they deserve for us to make a responsible decision with the down payment and paying this off in 10 years. So that would require the motion maker to agree to that at this point in time. We have other speakers.
There's a motion
so-
on the floor. Yeah.
Well, let's go through the other speakers. Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. We're here. Just briefly, we've had these arguments as to whether this is a need or a want, and this is definitely a need. It is a health issue for our residents. It is a need in terms of economic development, and it is a need for the future of our youth. I want to say seniors too. We need to have healthy seniors because that cuts down on our costs, that cuts down on our calls for service. So this is definitely a need. It's also a want. And I believe the citizens of Oceanside deserve this project.
I have been spending a lot of time asking a lot of questions of staff. I actually had a conversation with Councilmember Rodriguez. He asked to talk with me about the funding. And I have been on the council dais for 19 years, and I've seen a lot in terms of funding. So when he first asked about, going into our portfolio, I said, no, we got in trouble with that. We actually ended up hurting our own ratings. This had to do with when I got on the council in 2000, so it's say 2001, staff came to us and said, that $1 million that we borrowed against the portfolio to build the visitor center and the Chamber of Commerce building, that was a really, really bad idea. And it hurt us, so we had to refinance that. So we cannot raid our portfolio. Our healthy cities. We heard today loud and clear that one of the reasons that we do not have a AAA rating is because we need to have a higher healthy cities reserves account. So that, we can't raid that. Okay, park fund. And I want to thank Councilmember Feller for all his years serving as the liaison for the Parks and Rec Commission, because I got to serve on it. I was appointed this year. And let me tell you, we're going through the park master plan. If we had $100 million in the park fund, we would spend every single dime. There are so many needs. We have a total of 42 parks that have not seen a whole lot of upgrades. 42 parks, 32 of those have bathrooms that probably all need to be replaced, or many of them need to be replaced. We don't have any funds that are extra, even though we're hearing we have $2 million. We actually we actually need to actually put lights on at Mance Buchanan Park so we can extend the play period, so we can finally have football, the Warriors or any other football playing on Mance Buchanan Park. We actually have John Landis Park, which is in dire need of tender, loving care. Many of our parks need that, and I am so grateful that Joe Balderrama Park just got a $1.1 million grant. Total amount of money spent, $1.6 million. It didn't even touch the buildings. And it was built in 1957. 1957, the Chavez Resource Center. So let me tell you, $6.5 million we cannot touch, and I'm urging my colleagues not to touch that fund. We need it for leverage. Whenever you get a grant, many times you have to put your own money, matching funds or whatever, to be able to get those grants. Infrastructure. We have $7 million in the infrastructure reserve. We can't touch that either. For the infrastructure, we put away $7 million. Guess what? It's not enough. It's there for the pier. You already heard it's $22 million, so $7 million doesn't even touch it. And it's also there for sand replenishment projects. Sand replenishment, also a very, very high goal for our city. And the 503. The 503 has $4 million. And that is set aside for the training tower, kitchen, other things on Jones Road. We cannot do that. In terms of employee post-employment leave, $3.6 million. We need that to be able to fund that. For the PERS, unfunded liability, our economic stabilization, we can't do that. So I went through all these questions with staff, one at a time, and then I finally did ask, well, what if we did pay this off earlier? How much money would we save? Would we be able to save money? And that question was actually answered with the same answer. We would save $11 million. So I would suggest that we not put in down payment because we don't have the money. We would basically be robbing, Peter to pay Paul, whatever. We would not be able to fund the ongoing projects that we have right now. So if we do anything, I would recommend an amendment that we direct staff to pay off this, direction to staff that we pay off this bond in 10 years, that would save us the $11 million. It would build the pool, and we can do that tonight. So that is my amendment. Thank you.
Leslie agrees. Councilmember Keim?
Thank you. Can you hear me? This has been one of the hardest decisions I've had so far. Growing up, I went to high school in the 90s, and I swam and played water polo. I also learned how to swim at Marshall Street, and then I was a lifeguard at Brook Street and Marshall Street. So I am extremely familiar with our pools, their capabilities, what they lack, and what we need. So this is not a question of if we need a new pool, it's just a question of if we can pay for it for me. And I really have to give staff credit for the time they spent with me, and we went over all of our available money everywhere, and I was trying to find every way that we could support this. $20 million to service the bond is a lot of money to pay. And I think my worst fear in this is opening the pool in 2021, having a recession, and laying people off at the same time. So, I mean, how much in 2008 and 9, what would 1.5 million a year, what would it have done for that in saving jobs? I mean, we laid off 100 people.
Councilmember Keim, Honorable Mayor, Council members, yes, we laid off about 100 positions. I would say average cost of an average position here is probably 75, 80,000, so we'd have to do the math.
Okay. Sorry for the last minute question. Thinking of this, that's what scares me, is to open this fantastic new pool and be laying people off at the same time, worst case scenario. However, I think there's two ways to do this. I think we either go with staff recommendation or we don't do it, because staff recommendation gives us, if we lock ourselves in and we take $7 million, we don't have that if we need it. So we either pay $1.5 million a year, and if we could pay it off in 10 years, great. But if we also lock ourselves into paying it off in 10 years and we're in a crunch, then we're going to be in trouble. So I think the responsible thing to do, if we're going to do it, is that I just think that it's difficult. And we also have to, the second difficult part of that is Brooks and Marshall Street, and we need to address that now, because that's to be another question that's going to come up. I think we need all three pools, but we're not Carlsbad. You heard Brian lump Carlsbad in with Newport Beach, Beverly Hills, and Santa Monica. So Carlsbad had 3 times our hotel tax that we did last year. So they paid with Alga Norte with cash. That's where I swim right now. They had a pay-as-you-go plan. We don't have that ability, but we still, when I was played water polo and swam 20 years ago, our kids were doing more with less then, and it's 20 years later and they still don't have it. So I think our kids, at the end of the day, our kids deserve an aquatic center. I think right now we have the money, but there could be some hard decisions coming up, whether we can make the repairs to Marshall and Brook Street. But those are important pools we need to have. But I mean, our kids have been doing more with less for a long time here, especially considering surrounding communities. So this has been an extremely difficult decision for me. But I'm going to support Deputy Mayor Feller and his motion, his original motion.
Deputy Mayor. All right. Okay, I'm going to ask you to hold your applause until after the vote's taken, or we're going to start taking breaks, and you'll be here all night. Deputy Mayor Feller.
All I wanted to point out is we have a lot of other things that we do need, and using every reserve we have, or parts of every reserve, I think we end up cutting our nose off to spite our face when you might need a good chunk of change for a future item that we're going to talk about in a little bit, sand on the beach. And what do we do in an emergency? We have healthy cities, but anything could happen. Could be the end times. We don't know. Anyway, that'll put us out of business anyway. So anyway, I'm solid on the motion.
Councilman Rodriguez.
Just to clarify, because I think Councilmember Keim, you might have been confused by the payoff in 10 years.
that's the soonest that we can pay it off. Even if we wanted to, we couldn't pay it off in under 10 years. And so it's just direction to staff to start preparing their 10-year budgeting and financing to prepare to pay this off in 10 years so it saves our city $11 million. But if we run into an emergency, then staff comes to us and says, hey, we can't pay it off in 10 years. We have this emergency. So then we extend that out. That's all it is. It's a responsible pathway of let's save $11 million. Here's the direction we're on. We have $8 million coming in 2026. I'll compromise. If you guys don't want to put a down payment, hey, I feel like we should put some skin in the game. We have some money. Let's go less. Let's go $5 million. Let's go $4 million. I think we need to put a down payment. It's just the right thing to do. It's just the right thing to do. And Esther was saying that we don't have the money. We don't have the money. The money's all allocated for. Well, why the heck are we moving on this pool then if we don't have the money? Right? Like, let's work together and get a 5-0 support on this with direction of staff to pay it off in 10 years. If that changes, staff's going to come to us and say, hey, guys, we can't pay it off in 10 years. Can we get on board with at least the 10 years and maybe $5,000 down?
Council.
5,000 is, I can second 5,000.
$5?
Councilmember Kime.
I have a quick question for staff. How much would, if we put out a new bond for $5 million less, how much would we save in debt service over the life of that? Just estimate, you think? I know that's a tough question on the spot, and I apologize. Would it be worth even doing that and touching anything that we have in reserves, or would it be?
Well, so the scenarios that I think were discussed was a difference between a net borrowing amount of a $26 million or a $19 million, right? And so the difference between those two scenarios on an annual debt service basis is about, call it $445,000 a year.
Okay.
In interest cost.
Cover some of the maintenance.
Well, I think it's also just to point out, Jane mentioned the 2015 lease revenue bonds that were paid off just at the end of last month. Those bonds had annual debt service of $2.2 million. So that last payment would have normally been November 1st. We needed to pay it off early to allow to pledge this Civic Center bond. So even at the $1.4 million that this bond issue will approximately cost, it's still less than what the city had been regularly budgeting to pay the $2.2 million, just to clarify.
Deputy Mayor Feller.
So that's 800,000 a month, a year. That could be used for the operations, but we can just come to you on 29 of November 1st and say we want to pay it off. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, the bonds will be redeemable at par, so essentially at the same principal amount that's outstanding in 10 years. And so at that point in time, if the city would have the option, if interest rates are favorable, to either refinance that debt at that time for potential savings, or the city, if it had saved up a sufficient amount of cash, it could pay it all off. It could decide at that point in time we want to contribute $5 or $10 million to downsize the bonds, and we'll refinance whatever's left. And those are all financial decisions that would be in the purview of the council at that time.
Okay.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
But between now and 10 years, we would be saving that money each year, utilizing this down payment fund. So from year 1 through year 10, we're saving that money immediately with a small down payment. And then if we give direction to staff, hey, please prepare this to be paid off in 10 years, we'll be saving $11 million in the long run compared to the 30-year. and they're going to set the budgets to be built around this. We're giving them direction to prepare for that 10-year point instead of waiting for the 10-year point, and now money's all allocated somewhere else. So I would really like to see all 5 of us get on board with a 10-year plan to staff to pay it off in 10 years and at least putting $5 million down.
So that would require the motion maker to.
I've got the answers I wanted from.
Well,
in 10 years, we can pay for this if we want to. Future councils can make the commitment to saving the money, and that's the way I would like to see it done.
So we have a motion for staff recommendation and a second. Please vote.
But I want to say that my motion for an amendment dies for lack of seconds. Thank you.
Motion approved, 4-1. Rodriguez, no.
Now we need a motion on item 14, which is the, and I'll make the motion on item 14 that we approve the staff recommendation for the construction contract.
Second.
I'll second that. I do have a question. When we, according to the record, we can start digging any minute?
October 30th.
We're going to get the funds right away.
They're already grading.
I know.
Hello? Okay. Deputy Mayor Feller, Honorable Mayor and City Council. The contractor's not ready to start until December 1st.
Okay.
Even though we approved, or you approved the contract tonight, there's still the matter of getting the contract documents to be signed, and then staff needs some time to review and make sure that insurance bonds, et cetera, are all in place before we even begin the process of digging. So December 1st is the start date.
But the grading by Moody's will be ongoing.
Yes. Correct.
Councilmember Sanchez?
Okay, I just want to say I will see you all on October 30th for groundbreaking.
Yeah.
All right? Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 4-1. Rodriguez, no.
We're going to go to item 16. How many do we have on 16?
On 16? 17. We
16?
have 8.
Oh. 8?
8. Okay. All right. Our first speaker.
But you know what? Let's take a 5-minute break and let.
Okay.
We're going to reconvene the meeting of the City Council, and we're going to start with item 16, which public communications, and we have 8.
We have 8 speakers under item number 17, items off the agenda. Our first speaker
17, I'm sorry.
is Kathy Kinane, to be followed by Wally Stevens, to be followed by Ken Layton, to be followed by Joanne Fields.
Oh, Joanne left.
Hello, Mayor Weiss, council members. My name is Kathy Kinane. My family's actually lived in Oceanside since 1981, and I'm the race director for the Oceanside Turkey Trot, and I'm here to let you know that it's only 7 weeks away, which is right around the corner, but you do have time to start training. If you start from run one telephone pole to the other and then walk one, I guarantee that you're going to be able to finish. We're proud to announce that the Front Wave Credit Union Oceanside Turkey Trot is celebrating its 14th anniversary this year. And it's looking awesome. We have fabulous art. You'll notice that cute little turkey with the surfboard on its head. And this year we have these beautiful shirts. Look at that. I got to show everything off, all the goodies that everybody gets. We have a 5-mile run. We got rid of the 10K because nobody wanted to run on the pier. Darn it. We thought that was unique, but they didn't want to. And we still have the 5K run, and we have the 5K walk, which is the biggest part of the event. We're expecting about 9,000 runners and walkers this year. of which 80% walk. So those of you who think you can't run a 5K, right? There's room for everybody to walk, and I'm pretty sure that Mayor Weiss is going to do it this year, right? Maybe. He's training for a triathlon. So anyways, I'm in this costume because we do have a costume contest, and we give prizes to Oceanside residents. You know, this isn't an ordinary race. We have 5-year age groups, but we split them up. If you live in Oceanside, you can run against just the people who live in Oceanside in your age group. And if you don't live in Oceanside, you can run against the people who don't live in Oceanside. So I'm here to recruit you for the Turkey Trot. It raises money for close to 60 nonprofits that serve Oceanside residents. Many of them are schools. And new this year is our Miles of Smiles program. Our foundation is giving out 6,000 pairs of shoelaces that say Miles of Smiles to children, students who run 50 miles at school every day. And I was proud McAuliffe was here today, and they were one of our highest participatory schools last year with about 60% participating in our Miles of Smiles program. So we'll see you at the Trot, and thank you for having me here tonight.
Kathy, what are you dressed as?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, what am I dressed as? Come on. Turkey. And get information at OsideTurkeyTrot.com. We'll see you there. Thanks, Jack. Thanks for all your support over the years. We really appreciate it.
Wally Stevens? No. Ken Layton? You're up next.
Mayor Weiss, council members, Ken Layton, South O, speaking only for myself. Some locals are in a tizzy over Councilman Rodriguez's aide who made a crude video while honing his comedy act. His defense, he was an ex-Marine who actually saw his buddies get killed. He said he developed a twisted sense of humor just to survive. EMTs and doctors will tell you they've done the same thing. I would suggest we should not railroad him for his poor attempts at stand-up. But what was most obscene about Michael Murray was another speech he made in front of a local Republican group. He told them how it's okay to have no experience to run for the state assembly. Why? Because he raised $50,000 in campaign cash in less than 30 days. Really, Mr. Murray? No one knows who the heck you are, and you immediately rake in $50K in 1 month? How could that be? Could it be that your boss, Chris Rodriguez, got developers who want to do business in Oceanside to cough up big, fat campaign donations to you? When I asked you last week who gave you this amazing wad of cash, you said you weren't really sure and that you would not have to disclose until December. Could it possibly be you took a big cash payoff from Integral, that creepy developer who wants to cram about 600 new homes onto our farmland where there is no infrastructure? Was Integral hedging its bets with your boss, Mr. Rodriguez, by greasing your campaign? You would not say. Deputy Mayor Feller admitted last month that the council aid system in Oceanside has been abused. Council aids don't exist in any other North County city, but we got them here in Oceanside. Last year, all 4 council aides made over $80,000 each in total pay and benefits, while Chuck Lowry's aide, Don Green, somehow worked Oceanside for $103,000, while council members themselves make less than half of that. Everyone in City Hall knew that Green and Jerry Kern's aide, Ben Sullivan, worked on political projects while on city time. And yet the city manager, city attorney, and personnel do nothing about these abuses that everyone in the city knows about. These aides, unlike every other city employee, can do whatever they want, whenever they want, and can only be fired by the council member who hired them. Mayor Weiss has chosen to avoid this scam by not hiring an aide, saving the city hundreds of thousands of dollars over time. The Oceanside City Council aid system fosters nepotism and big salaries for doing non-city work. Now, with the Rodriguez-Murray tag team, it has sunken to new lows. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jimmy Knott, to be followed by Becky Rapp, to be followed by John Daly.
Mayor, council members, Jimmy Knott, 127 Sherry Lane. I've been thinking and just musing about a few things that has been basically bugging me. I used to sit on to the telecommunications committee, and as you know, we used to have a wired system. Now we have a proliferation of the cell phones and open wireless systems that we're charging, with our, stupid cell phones and things like that we're charging and discharging constantly. Also, we're having the microwave systems that are taking and through the air, passing from point to point, cell phone tower to cell phone tower. And if you think about it, it's adding a lot of energy into the atmosphere. And the reason why I'm bringing this up to you is because of climate change. That energy into the atmosphere is potentially affecting the thermoclines of our whole planet. We may be inadvertently taking and changing our own climate by our technology. And the reason why that this is important for Oceanside is that we have our climate plans that we have to take in consideration. So this is something that I am seeing in the future here potentially going to be affecting those plans. And if we want to be on the cutting edge, we might want to take a look at that. I'm not saying it's actually real or unreal, but if you think about it logically, and the proliferation of it, and if we had some, it's like electronic smog, to put it that very simply. If we had glasses, you could see the smog enveloping and expanding, exponentially. And I would just take and momentarily ask people to quit taking and believing some things that some of the technology people say, and maybe just look at the science and let's see what the science has to say, because it has sort of concerned. I don't know if it has you, but the public may want to take and look at these things. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Becky Rapp. I'm a public health educator who works in North County. I'm here today to share with you a health advisory from the California Department of Public Health, which came out yesterday, and I have a copy for you I've already distributed. It urges everyone to refrain from vaping, no matter the substance or source, until current investigations are complete regarding the 113 people in California hospitalized for severe breathing problems and lung damage due to vaping, including 3 who died. In California, people with vaping-related lung disease are admitted to the hospital because of their breathing problems. 30% of people had to be treated with a mechanical ventilator or life support in the ICU. Teenagers and young adults make up almost half of the people hospitalized with breathing problems from vaping in California. In California, marijuana vaping products are supposed to be tested before being sold. However, there are very few testing facilities in California due to the lack of profit potential, and none in San Diego, in the county of San Diego. It estimated that only between 7 and 10% of marijuana vaping products are tested. The testing, when it occurs, includes a variety of chemicals, pesticides, microbial impurities, and heavy metals. Almost all people with lung damage from vaping say that they vaped or dabbed the cannabis product THC and CBD in cartridges, waxes, oils, and other forms. I think it is alarming that Oceanside is going forward with marijuana businesses while there is life-saving research going on regarding the problems with marijuana and marijuana vaping devices, and such alarming media and dangers from using marijuana products. A delay would allow the City Council to proceed with an abundance of caution for their citizens as you await research and testing facilities to be located somewhere in the county, as we still have none. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, could we have the city manager, I know that the city manager's office has been working on this, just to give us a where it's at.
Honorable Mayor, council members, we have been working with Vista Community Clinic. They are interested in a couple different approaches, either an all-out ban or a special business license for those businesses who sell to minors. That process will go through most likely the Public Safety Commission and come to the council for consideration, but we're just at the very nascent stages of it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
John Daly? Nope. And Morgan and Megan? No? Oh.
Hi, I'm Morgan. This is my sister.
Megan.
I know we can use that. Oh, yeah, cool. Okay, so we have just an issue regarding.
I can do it.
There we go. Cool. Okay, cool. Yeah, regarding parks and recreation. It was a concert in the park over at Rancho del Oro, over in that area. And we have a band out of Oceanside. Actually, we got started at Maricosta. And we were like just super interested in doing the concerts at the park. And so we tried a couple times contacting, it was Genevieve and Eileen Turk. They told us that they were ahead of the concerts in the park, or I don't know if the Parks and Recreation is associated with you guys, because they were saying it was like separate, but it's like with the city, and it was just really confusing. So anyways, they told us they were in charge, and so we contacted them a couple times, like through email, calling, and text messages, and it was just, we couldn't get through to them really, and we even saw them in person and talked to them about our band and or what are the qualifications to play in the concerts at the park, and we just didn't really get any feedback. So here's a couple like just messages that I sent and to try to get some kind of result. So it started way back in March, and I'm the blue. That's just our website I sent to her as well. And so so basically I was just inquiring about if there's any spots, if we're able to somehow play in it.
Yeah, since we've been living in Oceanside for 16 years, and we go to Maricosta, and we're part of the music program, and our band is too. So we're like local talent, so we were interested.
So it was March, and then a couple times in April, and she said she had the band scheduled, which I totally understand. And so then I asked if there was any other events like the concerts at the park, or if she scheduled, the whole season, or for next year too, starting early. And I still did not get any reply. And then the one in June 21st, she asked me to send her our website, which I already did when we saw her in person, and so I did, and then no reply for any of the messages. And then the last one says read, so they were all delivered and read. It's just no feedback. So yeah. And I don't know. I'm not sure why that is, but we just thought, maybe some diversity would be good too as well into it.
Thank you.
Excuse me. It appears that you may have talked to somebody with the Friends of Oceanside Park and Rec and not the staff. So Councilmember Sanchez is giving you my business card. We'll get you connected with the right staff member. Okay.
Cool. Thanks so much.
There are no more speakers for items off of the agenda.
With that, we'll go to item 18, which is a request by Deputy Mayor Feller and Councilmember Keim to discuss beach sand retention options. And
thank you. We have our Public Works Director, Kyle Kroger to Kroger. That's a market, isn't it, or something? Here to talk a little about what we've done, where we've been, and what we can do going into the future, and then we'll hear from the public and see if we can give some direction.
Honorable Mayor, council members, Kyle Koger, Public Works Director. Before we start discussion of this item, I'd like to do just a really brief overview to kind of tell you how we got to this point. So the first question is, why isn't there any sand on the beach? Well, you have a large jetty that's in the harbor, north side of the harbor mouth that restricts sand flow north and south. We also have a very developed coastline which restricts bluff erosion. And we've also, from dams and lack of rain and being in a drought, it restricts sediment to the beach. So the beach erosion, for the most part, started in 1942 after construction of the Camp Pendleton Harbor, the North Jetty. The federal government acknowledged responsibility for this in 1953, and Congress, through the Water Resources Act of 2000, authorized and directed the study at 100% federal expense and to be completed within 44 months. The objectives of the study were to mitigate the erosion and other impacts caused by the construction of the Camp Pendleton Harbor and to consider options to restore sand to city beaches. The study has still not been completed after almost 19 years later and almost $4 million spent by the Corps. The Corps says it will take a little bit less than $2 million and 2.5 years to complete. Some of the actions that staff has taken over the years, there's an annual trip to Washington, D.C. to meet with Army Corps staff, both senators' offices, our representative's office, and House and Senate appropriations committees to request funding. This is something we do annually. We've had numerous meetings with the Army Corps and the Army Civil Works Department to request action on the shoreline study. We've sent numerous letters, many coming from the mayor and city council, Senator Harris's office, Congressman Issa, Congressman Levin, asking the Corps and the Army Civil Works to fund and complete the study. We've also requested from Sandag that they do a third regional beach nourishment project, similar to the ones in 2001 and 2012. They have not identified any funding for those, a third project yet. This was a good project for the region. The state paid for 85% of the project, with the city splitting the remaining 15% based on the length of their coastline. Another thing that we've done is we look to sign a MOU with the Corps every year to try and get any extra beach sand from the dredging project in the harbor, and that's something we've had for several years now. Some of the years there is no extra sand, but the city is still trying to get extra sand from that project every year to put more sand on the beaches. That's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Can hear from the public, please.
Do we have public?
Yes, we do. As I call your name, please make your way to the next available microphone, and please be sure to speak clearly into the microphone. Our first speaker is Bob McCullough, to be followed by Scott Ashton, to be followed by Dirk Ackerman, to be followed by Matt Stevens. Bob left? Okay. Scott Ashton?
He's gone.
He's gone. Okay, next one. Dirk Ackerman?
Hello, Council. Dirk Ackerman, 30-year resident. Also SOS Oceanside. This is great that you guys are considering this. We really appreciate the opportunity to bring it out into the public forum. We feel that this is a historic moment for the city of Oceanside. When you look at the history of the sand mitigation efforts, it does go back to the early 50s, with several attempts being made and aborted during the meantime. It seems to us that the Army Corps has kind of given up on us. when we've read the letters that we've received back from the appeals from Congressman Levin's office. So we are encouraged that the city is taking it upon ourselves to look at the issue of sand loss and beach preservation. We feel that it is actually the most important issue that faces the city at this point, because without a beach, our tourist industry and the business climate would definitely suffer. So this is a big turning point for the city of Oceanside. I'm really excited that you guys are willing to talk about it, to consider it, and to start the process. It is going to be a long process. There's no doubt that it's going to be lengthy, and I think the city has to take the initiative by starting the process tonight. It's easy to imagine what we could do to our beaches. We could build breakwaters. We could do groins. We could do sand nourishment. But it is going to be a difficult road ahead as far as when we start doing the engineering, the planning, the environmental requirements, and then the administrative approvals that are necessary through the California Coastal Commission. So it's going to be a long road. It's going to be a difficult road, but I think it's certainly a road worthy that the city should undertake the effort. We have researched options for financing, and there is a lot of money out there. I think the city has to take the initiative and create a project, and then seek methods for financing the project. So we're very excited that you guys are taking a look at this, and thank you so much.
To be followed by Bob Ashton, to be followed by Nick Ritchie.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm born and raised in Oceanside, worked here, retired here, worked as a lifeguard captain for 20 years. Sand is very important to me. I spend most of my time at the beach, and now even more so with my grandkids. I was fortunate enough to go up in a plane on September 30th, 10:30 at high tide, and we started down in Carlsbad. So this is the Carlsbad border right here. You see St. Malo there. A small beach right there. In fact, we had a bocce ball tournament there this summer. We used to have it in Oceanside, but no sand. So as we go up the coast, you'll see that we really don't have at high tide any beach at all. If we didn't have the riprap, that water would be up into the houses. As we're going up, still in the South O area, you can see that we're just lacking sand. It's wet sand. We got Buccaneer Beach right here. We have lifeguard tower sitting there on a riprap that was put in probably 15, 20 years ago, just so they could have visibility to see up and down the coast. Coming up to Oceanside Boulevard, there's an access there at Oceanside Boulevard, which right now you really can't even use it because of the rock exposed with the lack of sand. So emergency access is really difficult and has been for the last couple of years. Still coming up the coast, up to Forester Street, and you've got Hayes Street, Wisconsin. We've got the tower there again that was built up years ago to get that tower back out so they can see up and down the coastline. Tyson Street, we're starting to get a little bit of sand, but as you can see, the towers have been moved closer because those towers were spread out that Tower 5 right there was moved from Tyson Street, moved north toward to lifeguard tower number 3 because of the lack of sand. Lifeguard headquarters used to be able to drive around the pier at high tide. Now there's no way. So emergency access is hindered quite a bit with the lack of sand. North of the pier now, we are starting to build a beach, but still, it's still a lot smaller than it has been. North Coast Village, you can barely get around the rocks there. And we come into the Harbor Beach, and we do have, in between the breakwaters, we do have the sand. So I just wanted to give you a view from up above and what we do or don't have as far as sand. Thank you.
Bob Ashton, to be followed by Nick Ritchie, to be followed by Stephen Mashul.
Awesome. All right. Good evening, Mayor Weiss, council members, staff, fellow citizens. Thanks for the opportunity to come on up and talk this evening. I've been a resident of Oceanside since 1962 and was in the Navy for 30 years and just returned here to retire and enjoy the fantastic Oceanside beaches with my grandkids and my family. One of our goals to Save Oceanside Sand organization is to educate our population about what's going on our beaches. So Kyle illustrated a lot of this already, but again, scientia est potentia, or knowledge is power, and I think it's important for our folks to understand what goes on. So that's what we've done on our last meeting, and we presented this to the SOS folks at large. So some beach sand basics. As Kyle illustrated, beaches come from the erosion of our cliffs. The sand comes and carries down. Rivers carry sand down to the sea. We only have Santa Margarita River, which is the only river in San Diego County that actually flows and carries sand out to the ocean. Littoral transport, which is, again, staff pointed out that the structures prevent that littoral sand from flowing down onto our beaches. So a couple of terms that you'll see is beach accretion, beach erosion, and beach nourishment as you read various documents, and those are critical to understand. The history, Lake Henshaw was put in 1922. San Luis River flows at very high rainfalls, but really doesn't flow routinely and carry any sand for us. There's an awful lot of sand up there to be had, though, up at San Luis River. 1942, the boat basin was built, and up until now, we've had sand replenishment continuing on with millions of dollars and millions of yards of sand put in. Kyle spoke about the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers study, and then, of course, we fast forward to 2019, where we're teaming with the city and our fellow citizens to address this issue. So SOS, Save Oceanside Sand, advocates for retention systems, and those can come in many ways, whether, like, as Kyle said, they're breakwaters, they're jetties, groin systems, dunes, reef systems. But most importantly, our solution for Oceanside has to be supported by sound engineering and science, so we're just not winging it and we're not putting things or structures in the ocean that could negatively impact our shorefront. So in summary, we have a unique situation here, right? People come to Oceanside because it's Oceanside. They come here for the beaches. You know, remember the signs, tan your hide in Oceanside? Well, they're tanning their hide elsewhere now because there's no beach to tan your hide in. So again, thank you for your time this evening, and looking forward to continued work with you.
Good evening, council members, Mayor Nick Ritchie. What would most people in Oceanside say is the most valuable resource we have? The resource that a significant portion of our yearly economy benefits from. The resource, of course, sand. It's the beaches. We all know that the federal government is primarily responsible for the decades of sand degradation, but yet the federal government is purposefully avoiding the sand replenishment we need to restore our beaches. They continue to ignore our legitimate claim. While waiting for the federal government to step up, we may be losing precious opportunity to restore, protect, protect, and sustain the greatest resource Oceanside possesses. Our beaches and harbor last stat on beach attendance was 5 million people a year come to Oceanside beaches. In 2017, $351 million was spent by visitors coming to the city of Oceanside. There are 3,300 tourist jobs in Oceanside, and that's sure to increase with the completion of the Marriott complex to probably 5,000. And this once again represents a 5.1 increase since 2010. That's significant. That's significant to the people that live in the districts of the council members that work in the hospitality industry. Those people who stay in hotels, they spend on the average of $199 a day in Oceanside. They spend 3.6 days and on the average length of stay in Oceanside. $22.1 million in state and local taxes were generated last year, or actually 2017. And out of that, directly to the city as well, $7.4 million in TOT. And we all know where that goes. That goes to emergency personnel. It goes to very critical services within our city. These are strong stats. I believe we'd all like to see that grow as well. Yet, Visit Oceanside, the Chamber, and even various city offices are receiving phone calls from tourists. Phone calls not applauding our welcoming city, but criticizing the lack of sand and even stating that they will not return next year due to the degradation of our beaches. Tourists and locals want white, dry sand at even high tide. We lost Wisconsin in 3 years, just the last 3 years. How long will it take for the south of the pier to look like Tyson in Wisconsin? I believe sooner than later. Are you, as our leaders, willing to risk losing the greatest asset we have to non-action or uncreative action? One size does not fit all. We encourage you to allocate our tax dollars for sand retention study for the sake of our future. Thank you.
Stephen Meschel, to be followed by Laura Walsh, to be followed by Laura Walsh, to be followed by Jimmy Knott.
I'm going to keep this short. I'm Steve Mashew from North Coast Village. I hope you do approve transfer of funds for allocation for the beach replenishment, but that's, what are we going to do next? We're going to do more studies? Probably. We've got to do some studies, or we're going to get the Army Corps of Engineers to do the studies, and how do we get them motivated? It's clear that we have a serious problem on the beaches that we just heard all about it. But the problem is becoming more and more critical. We're going to lose all the rest. It keeps moving up the coast, the empty beach, the loss of sand, and in 4 or 5 years it'll be gone. Anytime I look at any schedule that says, okay, we're going to have the Army Corps of Engineers start a study, and they're going to finish their study in 2.5 years, which was that one, and another, we're not going to start getting sand on the beach or anything changed for 4 or 5 years, and by that time, a lot's gone. So somehow, we've got to put everything behind Kyle here, our sand czar, and say, we've got to focus in on this, set some goals, and if we can get the whole community, including our SOS Oceanside people who are out there to try to get community outreach and advocacy, writing our congressmen, our senators, whatever we need to do to try to get this thing off the ground, we really need to move out on it. Thank you.
Laura Walsh, to be followed by Jimmy Knott, to be followed by Carolyn Kramer.
Hi, my name is Laura Walsh. I work for the Surfrider Foundation. I also grew up doing 7 and 8 mile beach walks in San Diego, and that's with my parents. It's probably not possible today on a high tide. And I'm here today because I moved to San Diego to attend Scripps Oceanography, and I'd really like to see some of that science applied in the community. Unfortunately, a basic tenet of environmental science is when you do an environmental project, there are always other consequences in the environment. And so in light of coastal development and sea level rise, we're all facing really tough decisions, and there will be a lot of pressure for everyone wanting to choose simple solutions that are immediate. The Army Corps project is a good example of a short-sighted project that tried to focus on one thing and has had a lot of unmitigated consequences. And so we're just here to encourage everyone to look at strong long-term solutions. Specifically, a lot of sand retention projects actually increase erosion. They perpetuate the need for further engineered solutions. You guys in this community know that better than anyone, but there's been a lot of conversation about hard armoring solutions that really exacerbate the problem. And so we just wanted to come today to talk about that. And I'd always love to talk to people about, long-term solutions that make sense. So thank you.
Mayor, council members, Jimmy Knott 127 Sherry Lane. As you know, I like to take and operate by facts. And if you look at the pictures from taken back in the early 1900s, before the damming of the San Luis Rey River up in Escondido, there are pictures of our residents back then having a half-mile wide beach. Yes. And our History Society has put those over there. You can readily access those. Staff forgot to mention about how that we experimented with desert sand being brought to our shores, taking as an experiment. That was back in the early 90s or late 80s, if you remember. I don't know exactly what date. I remember going down there and watching it being deposited. What we have is a problem with the blockage of the stream, the river up there. We need to establish an assessment impact fee and send the bill to the offenders, Escondido, and everyone up for the San Luis Rey, and assess a fee for them to pay Oceanside for the impact that they're having on us for the absence of sand. One way to address it. Cliff wall collapse. There's no guarantee for having a wall not collapse, and that contributes. Those people who would benefit from such, they may have to have an assessment fee. Climate impact change. That's going to have a lot more impact in the near future. That needs to be looked at. I brought in information a couple of years ago to Councilmember Feller about 3 huge sandbars off the coast here. And as Councilmember Feller pointed out to me, well, maybe the environmentalists will say, well, maybe the ocean life has already grown on those and you can't suck it and put it back onto the coast. Something you may want to look into. Maybe sinking 2 or 3 battleships that are mothballed off the coast here, making diving centers to take and stop the flow that would take and make the sand come over. Artificial islands, that's there. And here's one of the things you may want to bring up to California Coastal Commission. How about blocking the littoral flow of sand and bringing a lawsuit against this California Coastal Commission by unequal allocation of sand for Oceanside? That's a simple lawsuit that could easily take and cause them to be responsible for the allocation of just sand distribution. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Carolyn Kramer, to be followed by Sherry Mackin, to be followed by Ashley Holmes.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. That's just a little article I found in the Orange County Register. Has to do with Newport River jetties that everybody raves about how great the surf is. So this little article about the surfers up there that are having a problem with the sand and ruining the waves. So this was also brought up by then City Manager Peter Weiss back in October of 2013. And nothing has changed except we have lost a lot more beach. I forgot to say, Carolyn Kramer, Citizens for Preservation of Parks and Beaches, Oceanside resident since 1975. The CPPB wishes to voice their objections to consider a study for sand retention and place their objections on the record. The CPPB is adamantly opposed to the placement of any sand retention devices such as groins, jetties, or other hard structures in Oceanside. That mistake was already made when the Oceanside Harbor was constructed and blocked the natural flow of sand between our rivers and lagoons. Our coastline from Camp Pendleton to San Diego has been impacted with the loss of sand and its natural flow due to the construction of the harbor jetties. Coast Law Group at that time wrote a letter to the mayor, and he was representing Coastal Environmental Rights Foundation, and I spoke with Marco, and they still stand behind no hard structures. Speaking as a former surfer, in the surfing world, Oceanside is considered among the best and most consistent surf breaks on the Southern California coastline. Surfing is an integral part of Oceanside's tourism. Oceanside waves play host to some of the best surfers in the world and some of the most prestigious surfing events, placing hard structures on our beaches to the south, and as some have suggested at 5 places along our beaches. Placing hard structures on our beaches to the south obliterate our sandbars that create our awesome waves. Say goodbye to our surfing events, including the body surfing event, Oceanside Longboard Surfing Contest, and the Supergirl, as well as a multitude of amateur surfing events. These events bring competitors from around the world and up and down the California coast. These competitors and spectators help our local merchants fill their coffers in restaurants and hotels. Watching the best surfers in the world is an awesome spectator draw. Hard structures on beaches do exactly what they are supposed to do: trap sand while they destroy the movement of sand. Let's see, where did I go here? That's it. Just one comment on Matt Stevens' photos. It's interesting to see in his photos, the only place that had sand was the place that did not have any riprap. So I thought that was interesting. There's sand where there isn't any riprap.
Hello again, Sherry Mackin. I'd just like to share with you, I attended the Parks and Rec Commission meeting where they reviewed the draft master plan for Parks and Recreation, and I found interesting data in there, and I'm going to share this one piece with you. In a random survey taken of Oceanside residents, 97% of Oceanside residents surveyed used our beaches. Of the 97%, 49% visited a beach in Oceanside at least once a week, 43% every 2 weeks, 5% once a month, and 3% did not go to our beaches in Oceanside. This use was the highest number use in all of the activities in Parks and Recreation in our city. So that tells you a little bit about how much we love our beaches here. All right, at that Parks and Rec Master Plan, Parks and Rec Master Plan draft meeting, they gave 60 acres of parkland credit for our beaches. I attended the meeting and I shared that the draft must be amended to reflect the beaches we have lost. A rough estimation of that is 50%. And that came from, the 60 acres came from a 1997 Parks and Recreation Master Plan then. So we've lost 50% of 60 acres, 30%. We have about 30 acres of beach available for Parks and Recreation. Our beaches are hungry, they need to be replenished. I support sand replenishment. I also support science. I did not see in this agenda item any mention of a study, a scientific study, merely an environmental review, and I'm extremely concerned about that. If you choose to amend the CIB, it should include a scientific study related to any and all sand retention ideas. And I also want to share, this was a very odd opening to this agenda item. seeing this PowerPoint presentation and kind of just left us. Normally you give us a little more to attach to when we speak, so it was kind of weird. Thank you.
Ashley Holmes? Warren Jacobs?
Good evening. I don't envy you guys at all. You guys got a tough issue to tackle, both in the short term and the long term. It's fairly obvious that every beach, every ocean place is unique. What works in Newport may not work here, may work here. But I support science. I taught earth science for Vista Unified School District for over 30 years, and I started their program up there. It doesn't make me an expert in the ocean by any means, but we have the premier institute for oceanographic studies in the world right down the street. And I think that any study, any money that's spent on this, other than just immediate annual replenishment, if you want a long-term thing, it has to be done with some serious geography and a look at our unique coastline. Anything that the Army Corps of Engineers has done has had these unintended consequences that was mentioned by the young lady earlier. I mean, Santa Barbara is a good example. When they built the jetty there to protect the harbor in the 30s, it completely destroyed every beach south of that. And but it did end up putting about 40 acres where the city college now stands. So I can't walk. I go to Cassidy Street. That's where I swim. Even at low tide, I cannot walk on dry sand. There's none from south all the way to Carlsbad. And even at low tide, the water's bouncing off the rocks about 200 yards south every day. So I think the beaches are changing really fast up here. So I know the replenishment issue, if you dredge it from the harbor, you're going to find some environmental issues with the sand that they're pulling out from the bottom. The deeper they go, the more pollutants there's going to be, the more heavy metals they're going to find in that sand. All the fuel, as well as organic decay that exists in those deep sands, is going to come up to the surface, and you're just going to put it right at the pier. So I don't know if you have to go further out to sea to get sand. Down in Carlsbad, where Dips is, they did a replenishment from off the coast, and it was pretty successful. It's still there 3 years later, but it's a huge issue, and I know if you just throw money at it, it's not going to fix it. You know, you can do a short-term thing with replenishment, but the long-term thing is going to be much tougher for you guys. Good luck.
There are no more speakers on this item.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
So I would
There hasn't
like
been a motion yet.
Ryan to pitch in here if you'd like, and then we can hear
Councilmember
what the
Sanchez.
other members say.
Thank you. I'll start. Okay, we don't really have a motion on the floor yet, so I'm going to go ahead and start talking to the issue, which is the condition of our beaches. I think that's the general kind of topic that we're on. And Mr. Koger forgot to mention that other contributions to our loss of sand is sea level rise. That is actually the biggest contribution. And we are currently doing a sea level rise study because we received a grant from the Coastal Commission. And we are actually required to let the Coastal Commission know how we are going to address sea level rise. About 10 years ago or so, can't remember exactly when, a council member from Solana Beach came and did a presentation about what they did to address sand, their sand retention program. And basically what they decided to do is do a 2% TOT increase, and then they had a dedicated fund, so they did sand replenishment every 2 years or so. We we especially would have benefited from that kind of a program because we do have hotels. We are a destination city, and I do feel that hotels would have said, yes, let's contribute to this, and let's ensure that there is sand on our beaches. Unfortunately, that motion didn't go anywhere. I have been on the Sandag Shoreline Preservation Working Group for quite a bit of time, and in fact, it was through the first regional sand replenishment project and the second one. The whole concept was that, and it started with a grant, a major grant from the state. So the whole idea was that regionally, we would address this regionally, and we would hopefully do this every 5 years. That there would be studies to see how long, what kind of grain, the sand migration and all that. And in fact, Sandag and Scripps Institute continue to monitor the sand, study it. They're still, trying to come up with different ways of addressing. One recent presentation, I want to say it was within the last couple of months, there was a presentation to the Sandag group, and basically they said that the projects that kept the most sand on the beach were sand replenishment projects. That's basically it. We received internally, the public may not have gotten notice of it, but we received an internal, we called it internal memo from the office of the city manager in trying to address what we can do to, to complete this. And basically we're stalled because of this shoreline study that the Army Corps was supposed to complete 10 years ago, or was it 12 years ago, I forget. They still need about $1.8 million, and I know everyone has written, the chamber, our congressmen have written to the Army Corps to try to get that in the budget for this coming. I mean, every year it's been done, but this time I think there's been a greater effort. And so what this internal memo basically suggested is that, okay, look, if we fail to get funding for the shoreline study, then why don't we I'm going to recommend that we just go ahead and pay to complete it. Pay the $1.8 million. It's been lagging. This way we have at least some information, some analysis, some scientific data that we can actually use to finally and hopefully address this issue. And it was after that memo that I guess this got on the dais, this item, council member item. Now, I am pretty familiar with the Coastal Act. I was honored to be able to have served on the Coastal Commission for 4 years. I know that there is probably no way that a hard structure would ever be approved by the Coastal Commission. It's my opinion that groins or jetties, we would be spinning our wheels, but I think that we ought to do some studies. There have been different things that have happened over the last few years. The city of Encinitas is actually the Cardiff, the Living Dunes project. I don't know if any of you have noticed that the shoreline has actually gotten larger along the train track because of this project that Encinitas did, doing this Living Dunes. They did an artificial dune, and it actually has survived, and it's retaining sand. It's at least 3 or 4 times wider than it was before. So I would like to see us study this. I'm wondering, we do have a study out there that we're doing, which is the sea level rise study, that probably would get us some information. Staff is recommending that we complete the study, the shoreline study, by the Army Corps, and that's $1.8 million. My concern is I don't want to put more money into studies when, in fact, we already have 2 studies out there. we should probably complete, I mean, I know it's a lot of money, 1.8, but I kind of feel it's going to be, doing another study is going to be duplicating efforts, and, you know, it would not be responsible fiscally. So I looked at that internal memo, and I spoke with the city manager, and I thought, you know, it is a lot of money, but we've got to do this. We've got to get the study done. So that is not before us today, but certainly it's something that we can give direction to. So I feel that we ought to finish the study, the shoreline study. I know the Coastal Commission would look at like the least restrictive, that you would have to try everything else. We have tried sand replenishment, and that works. That works. So we need to either, you know, come up with a similar idea of, you know, finding a revenue stream to do this every 2 years, you know, or more, or maybe every year, to enrich our sand. But at the very least, we ought to finish the study. I think it would be nice to see if a living dune in Oceanside would work. That certainly is something that I think maybe Buccaneer Beach, or, you know, we should look at this. We should look at ways of doing this. So, and the one thing, one of the reasons why this will never get passed is because this is something that I had to be educated about. We're on the same swell as Carlsbad. We're on the same swell. We put any structures up, Carlsbad would be starved of sand. There is no way in heck they're going to ever agree to that, and you know, it's just not going to go anywhere. I don't want our community to have fake hopes, or, you know, hopes of getting jetties that will never happen. But I do want to address sand for our beaches, and I do feel very strongly that it's probably going to be a sand replenishment program, and we got to find the money. And I know right now we have...
You have a minute left.
Okay. I know right now we're using our TOT dollars to fund Visit Oceanside, but perhaps, you know, this next contract, I think it's, 5 years? 5 years. Maybe after this contract, maybe then we devote that money towards a program funding going forward to fund sand replenishment every year, every 2 years. Thank you.
I will say that we recently met with the Corps of Engineers, and they indicated that even if they were to finish the study, it will likely not result in identifying any options or alternatives. So, Councilmember Rodriguez.
Okay, so we have an immediate issue, which I don't understand the red tape. So every year, by the way, thank you for your presentation. With council agenda items, it's just something we discuss. I'm impressed you even put a presentation together, so thank you for that. That really helped bring me up to speed. Sand replenishment, do we have to go through the Coastal Commission every time we want to do sand replenishment?
Honorable Mayor, council members, Councilmember Rodriguez. So we have a harbor dredging project that's done by the Corps every year, and they have to go through Coastal Commission and get all the permits every year for that project. If the city was to take on a project, like let's say we were going to hire Manson or some other dredging company to come dredge material offshore, we would have to go through the process of getting 3, 4, or 5 permits from all the regulatory agencies.
Is there ever sand replenishment where we're not taking from the harbor and we, outsourced sand that we get that's clean, certified, and we dump it on our beaches? Do we ever have projects like that throughout the year?
Yeah, so we do the harbor dredging every year because basically the harbor fills in, and it's for navigational purposes, and obviously we get the benefit of sand on our beaches. The sand dag projects that we talked about a little earlier from 2001 and 2012, they actually went, I believe, 3/4 of a mile offshore at 15 borrow sites and pumped sand 3/4 of a mile on the San Diego coastline from Oceanside down to Imperial Beach at several locations.
Okay, but inland, I heard bringing desert sand. When was the last time we did something like that?
So we have it's called a scoop permit. It's I don't remember the whole
Opportunistic,
the
right?
Yeah, it's opportunistic sand permit, and so if we can identify development projects that have beach quality sand, then we can actually take that sand to the beach and dump it and spread it. And we've done that several times. We've had this permit for about it's coming up on 3 years. It's a 5-year permit. It allows us to dump 150,000 cubic yards of sand per year with this permit. And we've never come close to that, but we have found small sources of sand and dumped it on our beaches.
Okay, so what's stopping us from brokering a deal inland with some good sand and trucking as much of it as we can into spots on our beaches immediately?
So one of the things I looked at a couple of years ago was these projects really don't pencil out unless someone brings the sand to our beaches, and then we can spread it out. And you have to get the sand for free. It's just expensive to truck sand from inland or further away. Manchester was building a project at the Navy Yard a couple of years ago, and they were actually offering free sand from that project. It was good material. It was going to cost over $1 million for us to truck it from down San Diego Bay up to Oceanside, dump it, and spread it. It was well over $1 million. It just didn't really pencil out.
Is that the only sort of project we've looked at, is just using that as a reference, the Manchester one?
I'm just using that as a reference. We've looked at other projects as they come up.
Okay, well, I'm curious and interested in looking at exploring just immediate, do we have the trucks? Can we rent the trucks? Can we, as a city, kind of contract out and not really go through a third-party company? Or we do the movement of the sand, buy the sand, and bring it in quicker? Like, is there any options like that would even be worth exploring just to cut the cost, like to immediately bring relief? Yes, it's going to cost money. I get that. All these long-term options I'm hearing are dead ends. We need immediate relief, and if we have the money, it's worth it, to our city to create some beaches. And so, is it worth making those efforts to explore shipping in or trucking in sand to our beaches?
So let me start by saying the harbor dredging project. We dredge about 225,000 cubic yards of sand every year from that project, and it goes away in a hurry. I mean, they put it on the beach and it goes away in a hurry. If we were to put 100,000, 150,000 cubic yards on the beach, in my opinion, it typically doesn't stay that long. It'll stay for a little while, but we get the storms in the winter and a lot of it goes away. It will come back a little bit in the summer, but for the most part, we've been losing sand over time.
So it's pretty much dredging is our only real short-term option.
I would say so.
Okay.
Councilmember Keim?
Okay, so I think if everyone's paying attention and you heard us speak, you kind of understand why we don't have sand. We can't do this because we can't do that, and this person will say no, and so we're just not going to try. And so at a certain point, we have to have a plan, go forward, see what we can do, and do something. If Coastal Commission tells us no, then we go back and try again. So, going back to sea level rise, a sea level rise expert from Scripps Oceanography, Institute of Oceanography, in September 9th of this year on KPBS said that the water has risen less than a foot in the last century. So, and he said much of the problem, he's quoted, is a sand shortage. So, and the sand shortage is going to exacerbate any sea level rise that we do have in the future. So it's an issue we have to deal with. And right now, with our sand replenishment, all we're doing is pumping sand. It's going away. We can't pump it fast enough. We can't feasibly truck it fast enough. We have to have some other, whether it's, I've heard of a $100 million sand bypass system that the Corps is going to do for us, but we can't get a $3 million sand study. So I think we've just hit dead end after dead end. So the city needs to actually step forward and take a step, make a plan, and come back. And actually, if we get told no, we can go back and work around it and see what we can do. And it's important we work with our neighbors, Carlsbad and Sanitas, Del Mar, Solana Beach. We reach out and do it as a region and make sure that we're working and not hurting southerly coastal neighbors. Thank you.
So listening to this and having been around trying to figure out what to do, at least as the way it's worded, I support advancing some type of an effort to address our ongoing sand retention needs. So I'm going to make a motion that we have staff come back with an amendment to the current CIP to include a project to prepare a preliminary design and the appropriate studies for a sand retention project.
Second.
Councilmember Sanchez?
Thank you. One of the things that
Keep it short. You're almost out of
that
time.
is really important to sand staying on our beaches is a type and size of the sand. And bottom line is that if we had something a little bigger than what we get from the harbor dredging, it would stay longer. We actually experimented with that during, I think it was the second one, where the sand was a little bigger and it actually did stay longer. I don't understand what the motion is, but I will give direction to staff that if we are looking at ways of maintaining sand on the beach, that we also look at doing something like a living dune, as did Encinitas. That was something that was approved by the Coastal Commission. I know that Carlsbad is going to be against this, as will all the other coastal cities, because I sit on the Sandag Shoreline Preservation Group, and so therefore they're not going to agree with this, and so that's going to go nowhere. So I support
you're out of time, Esther.
Going forward in terms of looking at potential like the sand dunes, but we've got $1.8 million we're probably going to spend.
Esther, your time is up. If you can please hurry up.
Yes. So if we can do that, that would be great.
I understood the motion, pretty open-ended motion for a sand retention project, and I second that. I know it's already been seconded.
Oh.
Deputy Mayor Feller?
Okay. We've tried several things. We did trash to the desert and brought back sand as a pilot program. The sand that we got in 2001 came out of San Diego Harbor and other sites coming north. Even had some missiles, not missiles, but bombs that had fallen off of ships. And I'd bet a lot of money there's riprap all the way down our beaches in front of our buildings. You build a swimming pool, the plunge underneath the community center. I'm sure there's riprap in that area all the way down the coast. I think we should look at all concepts. Our sand goes faster because I think just the way the sand flows, it flows away from us, because most of the beaches in Carlsbad are fairly well established. They have the jetties, the small jetties that are around the power plant, and I think those make a difference. I showed the Save Our Sand group pictures of kind of horseshoe-shaped groins or barriers in Israel that one of our employees brought up to my office. There's literal cells. That dredging, offshore dredging, could be some of the sand that we look at. I don't know how the engineering works, but there's lots of things.
A minute left.
A minute left. She talked for 20 minutes. And there's probably grant funding. So I'm supportive of the mayor's motion, and I think we should get on with it.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Yeah, I'm on board for just giving staff clear direction. Aggressively, just please work on looking for something, turn over every stone, go back through it all. But I just want to remind you guys on the motion, if council does not give a time period, it's defaulted to 45 days. So if you want, I think they need a little more than 45 days.
I agree.
Is there a limit on how much money?
They have to come back. The direction is to amend the CIP, so they're going to have to come back to us with that amendment and tell us how much
So
money.
there's no limit right now?
Right now.
Okay.
So they'll have to come back with an action, and I think as part of that, you need to tell us how long it's going to take to do the studies. So we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
So, before we do our final adjournment, I just want to, on behalf of the entire City Council, thank Michelle for her 40, how many years? Her recent service. So everyone stand
I
up.
think we should all say something.
And she's fine.
Well, I want to say she's the first city manager that is not leaving in a bad way. That she has actually done so much for us here at Oceanside. So thank you so much.
And with that, we will adjourn to 3:30 on Wednesday, October 23rd.